What is it that you want? Not just what you want in this moment. That's fleeting. You get it and move on. Or you don't, and you forget. No. What do you want? What do you yearn for? That humming dissatisfaction that underscores every moment of your life. The constant rumbling, always beneath the surface, that you can never put your finger on. Behind your computer monitor, at the bottom of your $4 coffee. That quiet moment when you go to the toilet at a friend's wedding and look at yourself in the mirror, asking, why am I not happy yet? This moment, this object, this feeling that I was looking forward to, why does it feel empty? A night in with your best friends, a promotion at work, a new car, a new house, all empty. So when I ask you again, I want you to be serious. None of that fake surface-level fleeting drivel. What is it that you want? What will genuinely make you happy? The words buzz around the student's head. He hasn't listened to a word of this lecture, not for a moment. Last night's therapy session had clearly struck a bit too close to home. He'd never expected this new therapist to be so direct. What was it that he really wanted? The student looks down at his laptop. He'd really wanted that. He'd spent months researching it, holding off on buying other models, waiting and saving up for the perfect computer. And here it is, with the same old boring lecture notes on the screen as his old one. Within a week, he'd been back online looking up new phones. Here he is, 21 years old already, and studying for a degree he doesn't really care about. Surrounded by happy, smiling students who are all clearly going to be far more successful and happy than he'll ever be. Beautiful people everywhere he looks. People who know how to dress well, know how to have a conversation, how to smile and laugh with friends, how to have friends in the first place. His therapist is right. What's he got to be happy about? That dissatisfied humming running through his life is steadily turning into a roar. What would actually make him happy? The more he thinks about it, the more the sense of dread creeps in. What has he actually got to look forward to in life? What can fill that void? The lecture is over. He hadn't even realized. Everyone around him is already on their feet, putting notepads and laptops into bags, chatting away with their friends. The student doesn't have anyone else in his row. He's somehow picked the only row in the lecture hall with just one person in it. No, that's not the case. This is the only row in the lecture with just one person in it, because he picked it. His only company on this row? A fly. A fly that had been following him around all week. What's the point? He looks at his laptop screen. Empty. His phone buzzes. It's his mom. He declines the call. Swinging his bag onto his shoulder, the student makes his way to the door. A group of guys up ahead are chatting loudly as they open it. One of them half glances back over his shoulder. He stops in the doorway, holding the door open. The student looks around. No one else was with him. Who's this guy holding the door open for? You okay? The guy asks, looking straight at the student. His eyes are very blue. The student rushes through the doorway, muttering a "thank you" on his way through. His phone starts to ring again in his pocket. He sits up alone that night. He does the same most nights. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't be able to fall asleep. Sharing a house with 7 other people, there's a party happening in one part of the house pretty much every night. The thumping bass is the only sound to reach the student as he sits quietly at his window, looking out at the bags of trash lining the street and the couple across from him arguing on their porch. The little fly in his room is the only one keeping him company, not buzzing around or trying to escape through the glass, just sitting there next to him, watching the world go by. What is it that you really want? The words ring around in his head again. Tell me what will make you truly happy. What is it? I think I just want someone to love me, the student says quietly. He sits quietly by the window for a few more minutes, not noticing as the little fly next to him catches fire and rolls onto its back, legs curled in the air. The student just goes to bed. Nothing's ever going to change, is it? A week later, the student is back in that same lecture again. He arrived early this week, sitting down and unpacking his stuff a good 15 minutes before they were due to start. Surreptitiously as he can, The student glances over at the door every time he hears it swing open. It's the usual procession of beautiful, happy people, each one dressed exactly how they want. Personalities, goals, and aspirations filling each of them. He looks down at his outfit. Gray. The lecture starts, but the student still can't quite focus. He keeps his head half turned towards the door the whole time, waiting. 10 minutes go by. Nothing. He slumps down in his chair and starts taking notes, just as the door softly creeps open behind him, making a gentle hushing noise on the carpet. The student turns. There he is, the guy from before with the blue eyes. The student tries his best to swallow his grin. He's the only one in his row. If he can just get the guy's attention, maybe he'll come and sit with him. But no, that's a stupid plan. Why would anyone want to come and... The bag lands in the seat next to him. The student turns to see those same piercing blue eyes. Anyone sitting here? The guy whispers. The student opens his mouth to reply, but the words get stuck. After a second, he manages to shake his head. The guy with the blue eyes grins and sinks into the seat. After a moment, he asks if he can borrow a pen. That's funny. The student can see a pen right there in the side pocket of the guy's bag. Why would this guy choose to sit with him? There are plenty of free seats in this lecture hall. They're everywhere. One thing's for sure. The student definitely can't talk to this guy afterwards. No way. He's too weird, it'll be obvious. No one ever wants to have a conversation with him. Everyone he talks to is always sidling their way out of the room after just a couple of minutes. Besides, what if this guy finds out what he's really like? That he's been seeing a therapist. Not just a therapist. That would be pretty normal. Normal people do that. No, what if this guy found out that his therapist was a fly? A fly that had been following him around, that he'd been talking to every night before bed. A fly that had been asking him what his deepest desires were. A fly that he'd woken up to find dead and burnt on his windowsill this morning. Nope, no way is he going to have a conversation with this guy. It would just be a disaster. There's no other option. He has to call his mom. As soon as the lecture is over, he'll call her and deal with whatever it is she has to say. He takes the phone out of his pocket and stealthily gets his mom's contact details up, ready to hit the call button as soon as the lecture finishes. There, the final slide. The student hits dial and immediately turns away from the blue-eyed guy next to him, getting up and putting it to his ear. He shoulders his bag and marches out of the lecture hall, not looking back until he reaches the little square of grass outside where he sits. His heart doesn't stop hammering until he's sitting there. His mom takes a long time to pick up. When she does, it's clear that she's been crying. Not this again. The student swallows and prepares for her to start ranting. Only she doesn't. Instead, she just asks where he is and if she can drive over and get a coffee with him. He says yes, hangs up, and looks down at the phone, brow furrowed. What's she got to say to him this time? A shadow falls over him. Turning, the student just sees two blue eyes. The guy is holding out the borrowed pen, a gentle smile on his face. His mom doesn't come for coffee in the end. Instead, she invites herself over to his house. It's the first time she's visited. As they make their way up all the flights of stairs to his floor, the student holds his breath, waiting for her to start complaining about the cigarette butts, ashtrays, and pizza boxes lining the hallways. But she doesn't. She doesn't say a word. He closes the door to his room behind her, and she lets out a sympathetic little sigh looking around. He probably should have tidied first. Here it comes. He can feel it. She's about to start lecturing him on his dirty clothes, leftover dishes, his unmade bed. But no, she just quietly picks up a sweater and starts folding it. Then another. As she tidies his room, she shoots him a sad little smile. This house really won't do. He explains to her that it's all he can afford at the moment. Well, then let me help you so you can find somewhere better. What's going on here? He doesn't know how to react. This is surely one of her games. Any second she's going to lash out at him. But no, she just gently brushes the dead fly off the windowsill into the trash and turns to him. They stand across the room from each other, the same way they always have, 8 feet between them, plenty of space, not too close. She closes the distance and pulls him in for a tight hug. As his mom buries her head in his chest, he notices for the first time how short she really is. Has she always been that height? Didn't she used to tower over him? Her muffled voice speaks into his chest, right into where his heart is beating. I'm so sorry for how I responded before. I didn't know what to say. You're my son, and I'm proud of you. I always have been. You love who you love. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Even your silly old mother. For a long time, the two of them stand there, crying together. It is a busy week moving everything into his new apartment. It's still a pretty basic place, but at least it's his own. The neighbors are quiet, the street is clean, and there are no flies. By the time the student sits down for his lecture, he's completely exhausted. He barely registers the bag landing on the floor next to him and the guy sitting in the seat. He's so tired, in fact, that the conversation catches him off guard. He hadn't prepared anything to say. But suddenly, they're talking. About the weather at first. It's sunnier now. Then about the class. Then why they chose to study here. Then their teenage years. Then their homes and families. The lecture starts, but the two of them keep muttering away to each other in hushed tones. The student cracks a joke, and the guy with blue eyes laughs. Properly laughs. He isn't just being polite, he actually found it funny. So funny that the lecturer tells the pair of them off, which just makes them laugh more. Is this what it's like? To be one of the beautiful, happy people? Days go by, and the student wakes up every morning expecting it to be over. He's going to wake up any minute now, and he'll be back in his old house with a talking fly waiting for him by the window. But he doesn't. It's sunny, day after day, week after week. No flies in sight. He calls his mom. He doesn't just pick up the phone to her, he actually starts to call her. He goes to parties, discovers he likes white wine, and finds out what it's like to have a bit too much of it. He has his first kiss and opens his eyes to see a pair of perfect blue ones staring back at him. He makes friends, more friends than he can count. Friends who text him asking to hang out, who help him move house, then move house again, and who fill up rows and rows of seats the day he gets married to the man he loves. The man who loves him back. Is this what it feels like? Is this happiness? Maybe, just maybe, this is it. Until one day, the man wakes up. Everything's perfect. The sun is still shining. He can hear his daughter's squeals from downstairs. His world is still happy. Except for one thing. His ear hurts. Not that much, but there's a little something. A kind of dull itch deep in his ear canal. The other ear starts to hurt as he makes his morning coffee. He should probably go to the doctor about it. He'll book that this week. But by that night, he knows he probably shouldn't wait any longer. He lies awake deep into the night, feeling his lungs tightening. You're not supposed to feel your lungs, are you? But it's not just his lungs. It's his throat, too, and his bowels. All of a sudden, his stomach starts convulsing. He throws off the sheets and rushes into the bathroom, not quite making it to the toilet. His vomit splatters across the tiles. He must be getting delirious. That can't be right. It looks like his vomit is moving, wriggling, and crawling. His husband appears behind him, switching on the light. The two of them stare in horror at the writhing maggots covering the bathroom floor. The X-rays and MRIs paint a grueling picture. Each progressive scan over the next couple of days looks worse than the last. What had once been healthy flesh and organ tissue steadily has deeper rivets chaotically eaten into it. The maggots work their way through the man's throat, lungs, stomach, sinuses, ears, bowels, and urethra. In some places, they run out of flesh and end up burrowing their way out of the surface of his skin. By the time the maggots mature into flies, the man is on his deathbed. Excessive blood loss, organ failure, and multiple infections have worn his body down to a husk. There's nothing left to be done for him. All that the man's husband, children, mother, and countless friends can do is stand by and watch, as one by one, thousands of flies emerge from the body of the man they'd once loved so dearly. Heartbreaking as it may be, this is the sad reality of what you sign up for when you make a deal with SCP-3063, known informally as the Fly. This SCP on the surface seems like one of the most harmless that the Foundation has encountered, taking the appearance of a common housefly. It has no extraordinary physical properties, nothing apparent to distinguish it from any other fly, and yet, it is one of the most powerful entities with an apparent ability to somehow alter reality itself. It is believed that SCP-3063 only exists in one instance at a time, though this is very difficult to prove given the sheer number of flies that exist around the world. As soon as one instance of SCP-3063 dies, a new one seems to manifest in a random location. Naturally, this makes studying the fly very difficult indeed. As far as the Foundation is aware, the fly communicates with its human target telepathically. It interrogates them, trying to discover what they want most in the world. It will then offer the individual that exact thing. If they refuse, it will make increasingly grand offers, tempting them with greater and greater promises until they accept. When I said this was one of the most powerful known SCPs, I was not exaggerating, because this fly does not make empty promises. Do you want to become a millionaire? You might wake up tomorrow to a number of anonymous bank transfers or a handful of lottery tickets pushed through your letterbox. Do you want to become an opera singer? The next time you sing in the shower, you'll find a whole new voice coming from your chest. Who knows, you may have left the window open and a superstar agent could be strolling by your house at that exact moment. Whatever it is that you tell the fly that you want, it will be granted. The little insect will catch fire and die straight away, appearing somewhere else in the world, ready to start talking to someone else. Your answered wish may not always take the form you expect, but it will be given to you, just like our student finding love everywhere he went for the next 6 years. Or, to be more precise, 2,376 days. You see, as soon as you make a deal with this fly, the clock is ticking. For 2,376 days, you will be free to enjoy your dream coming true, no strings attached. Until one day, you wake up with a little bit of discomfort, like something growing inside of you. Eggs, anything from 5,000 to 20,000 in number, will suddenly appear throughout your body. In your digestive system, respiratory system, and even your muscle fibers, small maggots will be born comprising all known Diptera species. They will steadily eat away at your body, feeding their way out of you and growing into regular adult flies as they emerge. Most individuals die from multiple organ failures during this stage. It can often be difficult to identify the exact cause of death, as the attack on the body's central systems is so absolute, devastating, and swift. If the individual dies before the 2,376th day, then the process is halted and the flies die along with them. Attempts to contain SCP-3063 have all proven unsuccessful. To date, 6 members of SCP Foundation personnel have been targeted by the fly. Each of them have tried to make a different wish to contain the fly, but each has had a loophole exposed. Senior researcher Elizabeth Gao requested the death of SCP-3063, which the fly interpreted as the death of that manifestation, combusted, and returned in another instance. Senior researcher David Roberts asked for the permanent containment of SCP-3063. The fly then stood totally still, allowing itself to be taken into secure containment below Site-63. But sure enough, after 2,376 days, the researcher died, and the fly was discovered to still be manifesting around the world. It again had interpreted its containment to refer to just that current instance of its body. A later researcher requests knowledge of how SCP-3063 functions, at which point the fly combusted and a document containing all known information about SCP-3063, everything I am telling you now, appeared before the researcher, who later died. The penultimate test conducted by SCP personnel proved to be the most chilling. Dr. Patrick McGann asked the fly if it could provide clear, understandable knowledge of SCP-3063 other than knowledge currently possessed by the SCP Foundation. The results of that exact experiment and the next one were provided for him, including details of his own death, which he immediately fulfilled. Either the fly has some precognizant abilities or is able to directly control events in the world, or both. The final experiment was conducted even though the fly had already provided the results in detail ahead of time. Dr. Jonathan Mabry simply asked, "Is there even a choice?" before suffering a severe pulmonary embolism and dying on the way to the hospital. Research indicates that SCP-3063 has been operating for over 4,000 years, with evidence of instances being discovered as far back as early Canaanite settlements. However, many theorize that the fly has been with us a lot longer than that. Unless future containment efforts are more successful, SCP-3063 will likely remain one of the most powerful and prolific entities outside of containment. So next time you see a fly buzzing around your room, it might be in your best interest to leave it alone.
A young researcher is thrown against the wall so hard that his spine breaks. A man turned into a scarecrow. A woman unmoored from gravity. A man losing a vital component of his brain. All these poisoned prizes can be yours if you have your hands on a certain special object. The thief is confused, to say the least, at the sight before him. It isn't exactly what he has been expecting to find on his travel to the Forgotten Cave. The strange object is displayed on an altar, with a beam emanating from somewhere above, shining a bright column of moonlight onto it. This must be the treasure that he was sent here for. But what was this strange treasure? He's still aching all over from his long journey, many days and nights spent crossing the desert just to reach his destination. All around the cavern are precious stones and gold coins, jewelry and riches beyond the thief's wildest dreams, and it's all his for the taking, just as long as he fulfills his promise to the strange, decrepit old man he met at the entrance of the cave. The thief steps closer to the altar and examines the object the old man told him to recover. Upon hearing the word lamp, the thief had been picturing an ornate oil jug with a handle and spout, not this thing. The thief had never seen an object quite like it. It's a tall, thin neck that winds upwards from a flat, circular base. The top looks like the hem of a dress, but far smaller and made from green glass. It's a lamp, all right, but not as this thief would know it. He lifts it up to get a closer look and notices something. An empty space beneath the stained glass lampshade. It looks like there's a part missing. Nearby, he comes across another curiosity, a rounded, almost perfect sphere of glass with an elongated protrusion terminating in a metal connector. It seems like it would be the perfect fit for the vacant port on the lamp. So, figuring out how to affix the two, the thief attaches the light bulb to the lamp. To his surprise, the bulb begins to glow a light blue. Cautiously, he places it back down and backs away, uncertain about what is about to happen next. A sudden plume of blue smoke erupts from the lamp, and the thief ducks for cover, thinking the object has exploded. But there's no loud sound, no flames, and this prompts him to peek out from his hiding place to see a mysterious figure emerging from the cloud. It looks to be an older man, hovering above the ground, not legs, but a tail of the same smoke as the rest of his body. Now the thief recognizes what's going on. He's grown up with stories of creatures almost exactly like this one, and it fills him with a rush of excitement. It's a genie. He can remember as clear as day tales about genies. They are mystical wish-givers, imprisoned within lamps and then bound to the person who discovers them. Once it emerges from its slumber, a genie will then offer whoever freed it 3 wishes.
Hey, you there! You gonna hide all night? Come on, kid, let's get this over with. What'll it be?
The genie asks rather brashly. The thief approaches the smoky, translucent figure and immediately knows exactly what to do. He's already thought of exactly what to ask for, the wish that can free him from his life of stealing and poverty. "Genie, I wish for you to make me rich," he says. As soon as he's finished his sentence, the genie vanishes, leaving the thief confused. Surely he still had another 2 wishes. He's startled as the light bulb he had affixed to the lamp suddenly explodes, for real this time, with a spark and a shower of small glass shards. Before the thief can so much as call for the genie to return and demand that it explain itself, he feels a sickly churning in his stomach. Something is very, very wrong. After a few short moments of violent and painful sickness, the thief lays dead on the floor of the cavern. If one from a more advanced period of history were to examine him, they'd find the thief's body exposed to an extremely large overdose of vitamin C, enough to kill him. The genie had made him rich. It just goes to show the old warning to be careful what you wish for is always applicable, especially when you find yourself making a wish from SCP-4035. Although it might look like an unassuming table lamp from the outside, within it stored an ancient entity who also happens to be wildly unpredictable, and a bit of a jerk, to be completely honest. Anyone examining SCP-4035 will notice the first odd thing about it fairly quickly. The lamp itself is rather unremarkable, composed of a simple iron base with a conical lampshade above. Its patterned stained glass sports a number of shades of green, and overall, it looks like the type of lamp you might find at a grandparent's house, or a distant elderly relative who always tells you just how much you've grown when you visit every 5 to 10 years, and whose home decor hasn't changed since the mid-1970s. But the first of SCP-4035's many strange properties is that it doesn't actually seem to work. Closer inspection of the lamp itself will reveal that it doesn't actually have any electrical components whatsoever. There's no wiring running through it, no cable leading to a plug that can be affixed to a wall socket, no switch, nothing. Except for a standard light bulb socket. So naturally, anyone coming across this seemingly useless table lamp will feel compelled to find a light bulb and see if the thing actually works. That's when things get even stranger. Light bulbs placed into SCP-4035 will indeed illuminate, despite the lack of electricity powering the lamp. There won't appear to be anything unusual about its functionality at first, other than the bulbs inserted into SCP-4035 will produce a blue-tinted light. But surely that's just because of its ornate stained glass lampshade, right? Wrong. Shortly after placing a light bulb within SCP-4035, that's when he emerges. Who is he? Well, the Foundation knows him as SCP-4035-1, but for the sake of brevity, let's just call him the Genie. Emerging from the lamp will be an entity that seems to be gaseous in its composition, lacking a tangible, physical form, and instead appearing to be incorporeal, almost like a ghost, or a man made of vapors. This being has been described as having the characteristics of a middle-aged, balding man, looking to be somewhere between his 40s and 50s. Whenever he appears, the genie always looks the same, always sporting a patchy brown suit coat. Beneath, however, he has no visible legs, and in their place is a cloud of blue gas that emanates from the lower body of SCP-4035-1. As soon as SCP-4035-1 appears, he will strike up a conversation with whoever placed a light bulb in the lamp that contains him. Now, you might be forgiven for, perhaps, predicting how the next interaction typically plays out. After all, you've seen Aladdin. A genie appears and offers to grant the person who discovered its lamp 3 wishes. However, the person making the wishes has to be very careful with how they word their requests to the magical entity. One wrong word, and they might find themselves suffering some unforeseen consequences. Or perhaps it unfolds like other myths and fables involving genies. The wishes are granted, but they come at a terrible, maybe even fatal, price. Well, you'd be almost right to expect something like that from this genie, but let's just say that SCP-4035-1 doesn't exactly enjoy doing things by the book. The genie introduces itself, usually under some randomly selected false name. Some favorites of his during past encounters have included Bobby, Spiff, Danny Fry, and Josephi Krakowski. Now you can see why just calling him the genie is a lot simpler. Anyway, after he manifests, SCP-4035-1 won't offer 3 wishes, but instead offers to sell a product to whoever placed a light bulb in SCP-4035. Attempts to ask the genie to elaborate on the product being offered are usually met with an evasive response and little detail being revealed. Once the person or subject talking to SCP-4035-1 responds, the genie then, in effect, grants their wish. They can just be trying to converse with the entity, but it will regard even a completely unrelated verbal response as an answer. The subjects typically receive a biological modification or other anomalous ability that directly relates to what they said to the genie, and we do mean directly. Once again, you might be forgiven for expecting that being granted supernatural powers by a magical genie would be a fun experience. After all, who doesn't want anomalous abilities? But be warned, the abilities SCP-4035-1 hands out usually fit the description of lackluster and disappointing. Why? Well, because typically, the anomalous modifications the genie makes are highly detrimental to the subject in question. You see, SCP-4035-1 has a habit of taking things extremely literally, almost to a pedantic extent, intentionally misinterpreting and leaving any who accidentally make a wish with it harmful changes to their minds and bodies. And like most genies from mythology, this one doesn't undo the wishes that it grants. After bestowing someone with abilities that usually leave them in agony or distress, the genie disappears back into SCP-4035, causing the light bulb inside to violently explode. Should someone attempt to replace it and get the genie to reverse whatever horrific change it has made, its voice will emanate from the lamp and yell,
"Sorry, kid, no refunds."
But how bad could these abilities possibly be? Well, to find out the answer, you only have to take a look at a select few of the numerous tests the SCP Foundation has done involving SCP-4035. Dr. Bannock, at one point in time, is assigned to be the head researcher in charge of conducting experiments on SCP-4035. The approach he takes is sending members of disposable D-Class personnel to interact with the lamp and genie, then record the results. The first test unfolds as follows. The subject, a D-Class with the designation number D4088, is sent into the containment chamber that houses SCP-4035. Dr. Bannock instructs him to place a light bulb in the socket and request telepathic abilities from SCP-4035-1. However, as the genie emerges, its sudden presence startles the D-Class, and he makes an expletive exclamation that we won't repeat. It was words to the effect of, "What the heck is this?" As a result, the genie grants D4088 an ability that relates to the sentence he said. And to call it particularly unpleasant might be something of an understatement. You see, because of a certain word the D-Class had used, the genie gives him the ability to identify the chemical composition of what we'll refer to as waste. The fact that he can even identify what kind of creature said waste comes from does little to make D4088 happy with his newfound power. Dr. Bannock is forced to refine his experimentation strategy following this bungled first attempt. In the lead-up to the second test, he informs the next D-Class candidate of what exactly they will be facing when they enter the chamber, so as not to be caught by surprise at the sight of the Genie. As a result, the second D-Class subject repeats the process of activating SCP-4035 and calmly repeats the request for telepathic abilities that he's been told to ask for. "I'd like to be able to read minds." Unfortunately, his wording means things haven't exactly gone according to plan. Testing with this subject reveals he hasn't developed any telepathic abilities. Disappointed, Dr. Bannock has the subject released back into Foundation incarceration alongside his fellow D-Class prisoners. However, several weeks pass, and it soon becomes apparent what ability this inmate has been granted. He encounters another D-Class, one of many pulled from maximum security prisons around the globe. This particular inmate has a tattoo on his forehead of a few words in Chinese. However, to the former test subject, these phrases appear to have been translated to English and read, "Cuban butter mustache." When he reveals the mistake made by his fellow inmate's tattoo artist, the subject is attacked and beaten up. He had, however, gained the ability to read minds. He can understand any form of writing on the forehead of a living being. A little time passes, and Dr. Bannock finds himself still struggling to get SCP-4035-1 to bestow any worthwhile abilities to test subjects. The Genie just seems to take everything far too literally, interpreting every wish with no regard for normal speech and colloquialisms, even disregarding the safety of the person making the wish. Dr. Bannock conducts yet another test, sending a member of D-Class to speak with the Genie and telling him to wish for muscle regeneration. The D-Class places the request with SCP-4035-1 seemingly without issue. However, then comes the next part, testing whether this new anomalous ability actually works the way Dr. Bannock intends. The subject of this latest experiment is intentionally injured. As this happens, his body appears to rapidly change. His muscular system swells up and multiplies, increasing from its original size. A successful test, right? Well, it would be, if the rapid muscle regeneration actually stopped. Before long, the D-Class test subject's muscle tissue is almost 250% bigger than its original size, making it much bigger than the rest of his body too. The subject is clearly highly distressed, although fortunately, this doesn't continue for long. Unfortunately, that's because his body can't function normally with this new rapid change, and as a result, the D-Class subject's vital signs stop after 3 short seconds. Getting more and more frustrated with the disastrous outcomes, Dr. Bannock makes the decision to simplify the requests made to the Genie. Surely it can't misinterpret one word, can it? The next test that Bannock conducts sees yet another unwitting member of D-Class, D-1899, entering the containment chamber and placing a light bulb within SCP-4035, just like her predecessors have done. She follows her instructions, and as the Genie appears, she asks for one thing: flight. A short while later, the Genie once again vanishes and leaves D-1899 with her wish. She has instantly become unaffected by the Earth's gravitational pull like normal. Within seconds, she is floating above the ground, as if experiencing the zero gravity of traveling in outer space. That certainly sounds idyllic, doesn't it? After all, who doesn't wish they could fly? To be granted the unique opportunity to view the majesty of the world from high above. Just one problem, though: getting back down. D-1899 quickly realizes, as does an agitated Dr. Bannock, that she isn't in control of her newfound flying abilities. She can't alter her direction or return back down to ground level at will. She's stuck, floating in the air, only able to affect her trajectory by propelling herself off of solid structures. The results of SCP-4035 tests continue to be somewhat undesirable, to say the least. An interaction with the Genie that begins with the phrase, "Hey man," causes the D-Class who spoke to be suddenly replaced with a crude scarecrow. When another subject makes a wish for a new life, they die almost instantly, only for moments later, one of the Foundation's researchers to suddenly give birth to a baby with identical genetic makeup to the now deceased D-Class. Another test sees a member of D-Class personnel enter the containment chamber with the instruction to wish for whatever they can think of. Put on the spot, they're unsure what to request when the Genie appears, and instead, they only offer up the response, "I don't know." Moments later, this subject falls into a catatonic state and eventually passes away. An autopsy of the subject's body reveals that their hippocampus has been removed. Thanks to the Genie, they literally didn't know anything. Further testing with SCP-4035 is later carried out. However, it should be noted that the next instance of a recorded experiment with the Genie isn't one that was authorized by the SCP Foundation. Rather, hearing that there was a Genie being tested, junior researcher Jacobson decides to try and make his ultimate wish come true. He's never been all that lucky in love, and it's left the young Foundation researcher with a little insecurity. Nothing that a visit to SCP-4035-1 can't fix, surely. Despite not being authorized to use SCP-4035, junior researcher Jacobson approaches the lamp within its containment chamber. He then repeats the process to make SCP-4035-1 appear, and then requests that the Genie grant his wish. Make me more attractive? In an ideal world, this scenario wraps up with junior researcher Jacobson becoming more handsome by conventional standards, perhaps even improving his sense of insecurity as a result. But by now, you can probably guess, that isn't what happens at all. Instead, being as literal as ever, the Genie grants the young researcher's wish and makes him more attractive. Seconds later, as soon as the Genie has demanifested, Jacobson is suddenly flung across the containment chamber and smacked sharply against the solid wall. The sheer force of the impact gives the junior researcher a severe spinal fracture. Of course, this catches the attention of Foundation security, who bring junior researcher Jacobson to the on-site medical center. There, he is given a full analysis, and this reveals the extent of just how attractive the Genie has made him. Junior researcher Jacobson's epidermis, his outer layer of skin, has been given properties similar to that of a high-powered magnet. He has been magnetically attracted to the metallic walls of the containment chamber, resulting in a spinal injury that would claim his life only 2 hours later. The extensive testing with SCP-4035 is still ongoing, and as a result, the Foundation sees it fit to keep a large supply of light bulbs near the lamp's containment chamber. Dr. Bannock's research seems to indicate that while a person is in close proximity with SCP-4035, they are more likely to suffer a sudden and inexplicable speech problem. For example, the most common of these are parapraxis, commonly known as a Freudian slip, or ankyloglossia, which is a condition wherein the skin joining a person's tongue to the bottom of their mouth is shorter than usual, and this affects normal tongue movement, sometimes being called a tongue tie. Being closer to SCP-4035-1 increases the chances of suffering some form of unintended speech mistake by 68% when talking to the Genie. To cut a long story short, the Genie doesn't just intentionally and obtusely interpret everything literally, but also directly affects how clear a person will be while making their wish. As for exactly where SCP-4035 comes from, there's little information available. Some theories suggest it might well be an actual mythological Genie who is just tired of spending so many centuries in the business of granting wishes for mortals. After all, imagine you get trapped in a desk lamp for all eternity and have to magically fulfill the requests of anyone that comes across you. Living through that for so long is liable to make a Genie bitter and petty. Then again, perhaps the Genie isn't even really a genuine Genie. It doesn't inhabit an oil lamp, but instead a broken table lamp. And instead of granting wishes in the way they're intended, it misinterprets and takes things too literally, leaving the poor fools who thought they'd be blessed with supernatural powers to deal with the consequences. But perhaps that's the point. If nothing else, the Genie residing in SCP-4035 serves as a reminder of that important lesson: to be careful what you wish for. In any case, if we were going looking for a Genie, we'd take the friendly Robin Williams type over this pedantic jerk any day. It's not every day that the SCP Foundation opens a brand new site and appoints a new site director, but today is one of those days. Work is about to begin at Site 41, and a respected senior researcher has been appointed director of the brand new site. He hasn't been told much about it yet, but he knows a few things for certain. Some sort of new, highly volatile anomaly was discovered, a site was constructed around it, and his many years of loyalty to the organization have finally been rewarded with a promotion. As he takes his morning shower, his mind races, turning over the possibilities that this new chapter might bring. Is he up to the potential challenges? Just how dangerous is this new anomaly? What could possibly necessitate the building of a brand new site just to contain it? Whatever it is, these years of securing, containing, and protecting have prepared him. He's seen bizarre creatures, cursed places, and objects that defy the laws of physics. Whatever awaits him in his new position, he can handle it. He rinses the shampoo from his hair, letting his jitters flow down the drain with it, and switches off the water. He climbs out of the shower and turns to the foggy mirror. He sweeps a palm across the glass and meets his reflection's eyes. His serious expression catches him off guard, and he can't help but let his mind wander back to someone else who looked at him that way, with those stony gray eyes, such a long time ago. He and his brother had never gotten along. Though they shared the same face, the same hair, and the same eyes, they couldn't have been more different. He was the screw-up, the one who couldn't focus in class and was always bumbling through life like a bull in a china shop. His brother was the golden boy, the star student who could do no wrong. As the boys got older, he tried to climb out of his brother's shadow and tried to live up to their parents' expectations, but anything he did, his brother could do better. He got into a great college, his brother got into Harvard. He got a job, his brother got a more impressive one. He got a Honda, his brother got a Mercedes. He fell in love with a girl, and his brother married her. It seemed like he would never stand on his own, never be anything but the lesser version of a perfect man, a nasty little homunculus who just happened to be wearing the graven image of something greater than himself. On the night of his brother's wedding, the festering resentment had finally come to the surface. He remembers the night in bits and pieces, a harsh word, a fifth drink, a broken champagne glass. His brother said something that went too far, cut too deep. Without thinking, he shoved him just a bit too hard. He watched his brother fall, watched his head hit the corner of the table, and then he was still. Silent. He thought about turning himself in, but then another thought crossed his mind. Why ruin two futures at once? His brother was gone. There was no coming back from that. Should he really spend the rest of his life in prison over a tragic mistake? It didn't seem fair. Instead, he planned. For once, he was grateful for the similarities between him and his brother, their handwriting, for instance. He forged a note to his brother's new bride, telling her that he couldn't take the pressures of his life anymore. He was leaving, fleeing to Europe to start a new life, with a new name, and leaving all of his old ties behind. Then he packed his brother's body, the one that looked so much like his own, into a suitcase. He drove out into the woods, to a place they had once gotten lost as children, and he buried it so deep no one would ever find it. He'd never forget how he felt that night, laboring away in the dark forest, face an unpleasant mess of snot and tears, the end of his shovel piercing the dirt again and again, until he'd made a big enough hole to consign the case that now held his own brother's mangled body. Every shovelful of dirt that he piled back on, hiding his sin, felt heavier than the last. What had he done? What the hell had he done? But by the time the grim deed was concluded, rationalizations had smoothed out the hard edges of his crime. There were a million reasons this was okay. This was justified. It was an accident, of course, that much was clear. But didn't his brother also have it coming, for flaunting his perfect life in his face for all these years? And who was the worthless chunk of dead meat now? The scales were balanced once more. No one would ever know what he did. No one but him, in those moments where he could see his brother in the mirror, reminding him of his greatest shame, no matter how hard he tried to forget. But that moment is long gone. He's back in the present now, grounding himself with a splash of cold water on his face. He shakes off the memories and dresses for the day. It's time to get to work. When he arrives at the facility, he's shocked by what he sees. It's a castle, grand and imposing, even if the years have not been particularly kind to it. The Foundation did not build this structure, though they've set up shop inside now. His reminiscence has made him late, and he hasn't even had a chance to look over his paperwork yet. But when you're a site director, what does it even matter if you're a little late? You're the boss, the head honcho. The party doesn't start until you walk in. Just the thought of it is enough to make his chest swell with pride. He will have to ask someone to fill him in, an eager subordinate who won't mind going over the basics of the new facility and what they are here to study. Like clockwork, a young assistant researcher scurries up to him, holding a clipboard and practically vibrating with energy. She clearly hasn't been working here long. There's still light behind her eyes. He thinks to himself, "The things you see here will snuff that out soon enough, my dear." The assistant researcher leads him inside the castle, its guts ripped out and replaced with sleek, modern technology. A stone staircase has been swapped out for a row of elevators, marble busts exchanged for security cameras and monitors. They enter one of the elevators, and the assistant presses the button for the lowest possible floor. They are going deep into the bowels of the castle, into the belly of the great beast. With a ding, the doors open, and they step out. The air down here has a peculiar smell, musty and dull, with a sharp metallic tang of dried blood. Along the wall, he can see a row of prison cells, 8 of them to be precise, all shut tight. They're rusted and old, They've been here for quite some time. The Foundation didn't put these here. Of course, he realizes with a sinking feeling in his stomach that he can't quite explain, these cells themselves must be the anomaly he's here to supervise the containment of. He should have read the file before arriving, shouldn't have let himself get distracted. Then he would know what he's walking into. "So here we are," the assistant chirps, startling the man. He had almost forgotten she was standing next to him. "Shall I give you the grand tour?" She won't last long here with such a chipper attitude, he thinks, but he nods just the same. She walks ahead of him, referring dutifully to her clipboard as she goes. "This is the first cell. As you can see, all of them are currently inactive. We'll be performing some tests later, though, and you'll hopefully get to see them in action. It's really something." She continues walking to the second cell. There are a lot of potential applications for this anomaly that, once we understand it, could be incredibly promising. He's only half listening as he trails behind her. As they near the third cell, the assistant glances back at him. "I really look forward to working with you, sir. I've heard such great things." He opens his mouth to brush off the praise, to feign humility for her sake, when a sound startles him. The grind of metal against metal, the screech of a long disused door. The third cell is opening on its own. The assistant flips through her notes, growing pale. "This isn't supposed to happen. This shouldn't be happening," she stammers, but he barely hears a word. He's staring, transfixed, at the darkness within. There's a rattling sound, like chains being dragged across a stone floor. What is about to be unleashed from this prison? He braces himself, remembering all of the near-death experiences he's faced down in the past. Nothing could prepare him for what finally appears. A pair of iron shackles, attached to lengths of chain, shoot out from the shadows, headed right for him. A shackle clamps suddenly around each of his wrists, the cold metal tight enough to cut off the circulation, digging into his skin. Then, an invisible force on the other end of the chains begins to pull. He fights it, the shackles cutting into him as the assistant screams for help, but his efforts are futile. Whatever wants to pull him closer, whatever is trying to lock him away, it's far stronger than he could ever be. The chains yank him inside the cell, and the door slides shut behind him with a crash. He thinks for just a moment that he could see his brother, laughing. Then, he's gone, leaving only an empty cell and a traumatized assistant behind. Sometimes the sins of the past come back to haunt you, and unfortunately for this particular man, there's no statute of limitations when it comes to SCP-567, or The Dungeon. In case the nickname wasn't clear enough, The Dungeon is not the sort of place you would ever want to be confined. SCP-567 is a series of 8 cells located beneath Foundation Site 41. Each cell has a designated number from SCP-567-1 through SCP-567-8. Most of the time, the cells are inactive and indistinguishable from any ordinary prison cell. However, when someone that one of the cells deems to be guilty of a specific offense enters their proximity, the anomalous properties of SCP-567 become abundantly clear. Each cell punishes a specific horrible act. SCP-567-1 targets those who have committed theft. 2 punishes sexual violence. 3 and 4 punish various types of murder. 5 punishes adultery. 6 and 7. I'm afraid I can't quite make out what it says. Someone appears to have deliberately scratched out the text in the file. As for SCP-567-8, whatever wrongdoing it chooses to penalize is still unknown, and it is never activated in the entire time the Foundation has known of it. Every other cell is completely empty, but 567-8 contains one single, antique wooden chair in the center of the room, nailed to the floor. The purpose of this chair is unclear. When an individual who has committed one of the aforementioned acts comes within 2.5 meters of their corresponding cell door, a pair of shackles will shoot out from within the cell, seemingly materializing out of nowhere. These shackles will then lock around the individual's wrists and drag them inside, at which point the cell door will slide itself closed and lock, and the prisoner and shackles will disappear. Multiple researchers have compared this anomaly, both in its function and its methodology, to SCP-1002, or Demisers, and SCP-2701, or True Solitary Confinement, which I have discussed at length before. Since the Foundation first contained SCP-567, only 2 prisoners have ever reappeared after being taken. 68 hours after he was first placed inside SCP-567-3, D-903912 escaped and was found collapsed on the ground just outside Site 41. He died only moments after reappearing, before any medical intervention could take place. An autopsy showed severe injuries, including lacerations, internal bleeding, and burns on his wrists and ankles. The second subject to ever return was D-937122, who was found 157 months after being locked in SCP-567-6. In spite of her injuries, which included head trauma, missing fingers, and the same burn marks on her wrists and ankles, this subject had a great deal more energy and attempted to attack the Foundation personnel that found her. She was subdued by several guards, restrained, and interrogated by an unnamed agent. Thankfully, an audio log of the interview was included in the file, giving us a sense of what transpired.
Please state your name.
The agent began. D-937122 did not respond.
Please state your name.
They repeated. Again, no response. The agent sighed heavily and changed tactics.
Look, I'm very sorry, and I want to help you, but we can't give you medical attention unless you cooperate with us, so please state your name for the record.
At long last, the D-Class responded with an intense outburst. My name? You want to know my name? Screw my name! There is no name, there is no anything! But there is. I escaped. I got the medal off, none of the... And here the audio was corrupted to the point where I couldn't understand what was being said. After the interference clears, D-937122 could be heard shouting, I should be free! Let me go! A struggle followed as she attempted to escape custody. The agent then replied, in an attempt to calm the D-Class down,
I apologize, but now we have the opportunity to...
Screw your opportunity. There is no opportunity. There's only escape. You called me a monster. Maybe I am one. But the nightmares, they... She briefly broke down into unintelligible mumbling before returning to normal speech. Compared to their crimes, I've done nothing wrong. Nothing at all. I haven't done anything wrong. Nothing. At this point, the D-Class became inconsolable, all coherent speech dissolving into sobs. The agent attempted to calm her down, but she remained hysterical. After several moments of sobbing, the D-Class began to gasp as if she was having difficulty breathing. She clutched her chest and began to go into apparent cardiac arrest. The agent attempted to administer CPR, but it was unsuccessful, and after a few minutes, she was dead. An autopsy was ordered following the interview, which revealed the apparent cause of her death. Her body was covered with tiny punctures, and a toxicology report revealed an unknown poison in her bloodstream. Though only 2 people have ever emerged from SCP-567, they were not the only organic life forms to break out of the dungeon's cells. Every so often, the doors of a cell will open, and an entity will emerge. These creatures are given the designation SCP-567-9, and they are always aggressive. They do not usually match the description of any existing animal, instead appearing to be some sort of undiscovered creature. Once an instance of SCP-567-9 has escaped its cell, it will attempt to leave the dungeon and attack anything that gets in its way. The first instance of SCP-567-9 observed by the Foundation was a 4-limbed creature approximately 2 meters in length. It walked on all 4s, but had human-like hands on its front limbs, complete with opposable thumbs and sophisticated enough mobility to operate machinery. It was highly intelligent and used this intellect to take out 14 Foundation operatives before it was contained. The details of SCP-567-9-2 have been stricken from any official documentation. The only thing I can surmise from the file is that 9 personnel were killed after it appeared, and one of the agents that helped contain it requested and received psychological counseling for what they experienced during the process. So whatever it was he encountered, it wasn't anything good. During a round of routine testing with SCP-567-4, while the cell door was open, an instance of SCP-567-9 appeared, attacking and killing the researcher leading the tests. The entity was not contained, but after 7 casualties, was lured back towards its original cell. At this point, the cell deployed its shackles, and the creature was pulled back inside. The most recent instance of SCP-567-9 emerged when the door to SCP-567-7 opened and closed spontaneously. This was spotted on the CCTV footage, but none of the security monitoring the video could see anything leaving the cell. 2 weeks later, an agent assigned to the dungeon was found dead in his home, still in bed. The circumstances of his death were virtually identical to those attributed to SCP-966, a nightmarish species of creature known as the Sleep Killer, which I've discussed here on the channel before. When the escaped entity was found in Site-41, it was found to resemble an instance of SCP-966, with only a few variations. It was successfully contained, and the on-site security cameras were upgraded to prepare for future anomalies like it. Though many specifics are missing from the file, including the exact appearances of the creature that emerged from the cells, I have deduced one thing. Wherever SCP-567 is transporting those it deems guilty, it is a prison for monsters of all species. Humans are not the only ones it wishes to hold accountable for their crimes. As I was reading about the dungeon and the various tests involving it, a rather morbid question came to mind. What would happen to a test subject guilty of more than one crime? Which cell would claim them? Well, fortunately for my curiosity, and unfortunately for him, one D-Class found out. D-834200 was used as a human test subject during initial studies of SCP-567. He was placed in front of SCP-567-6 and 7. Almost instantly, the cells rattled open, and the shackles shot out to grab him. His left wrist and ankle were ensnared by Cell 6, and his right were trapped by Cell 7. Then, he was pulled into both cells. Well, part of him was at least. How can I best explain his fate without causing too much distress? Have you ever held a wishbone in your hand at a family dinner while your sibling or cousin held the other side, and you both pulled until it broke? It was a bit like that. SCP Foundation Site-41 has been established in the abandoned castle that contains SCP-567 in order to prevent any civilians from coming across it. The entrance to the dungeon is kept sealed at all times, and the doors to each of the cells are monitored via CCTV. If any door is opened without authorization, Task Force Delta 9, also known as HAX, will be deployed to contain the resulting instance of SCP-567-9. If, for any reason, it cannot be contained, the task force is permitted to terminate. In order to prevent the unnecessary loss of any personnel, all applicants to join Task Force Delta 9 must have a clean criminal record, have never committed a crime at all, even at the behest of the Foundation, have a strong dedication to the law, and show loyalty to the social contract and the feelings of others. A robust moral compass is considered a vital qualification to work near SCP-567, lest they become simply one more victim added to its long list of tortured penitents. The Foundation has encountered many anomalies over the years that could pose a danger to the organization itself. SCP-567 is no exception. Untold numbers of Foundation operatives have committed terrible acts in the service of the greater good. They have lied, stolen, and even killed in order to protect and contain the secrets locked away in files and behind heavily guarded walls. A great deal of caution should be used when dealing with the dungeon, no matter how justified a person thinks their past sins might be. After all, there's no chance to plead your innocence, and the very prison that plans to hold you is also the judge, jury, and executioner. A pair of urban explorers are standing in front of a rather creepy-looking public school building. One explains to the other that it has been abandoned for years, though no one in the town seems to know exactly why. The two pull a board off one of the windows and climb through. The inside looks pretty much like they were expecting. Their flashlights reveal that years of squatters, teens partying, and wild animals have left plenty of refuse and debris lying around. There are two wings branching off the central portion of the building. They pick one of them to explore and start walking down the hall. As they make their way down past the graffiti-tagged walls, they stop to investigate one of the classrooms. It looks to be in the same bad state as the rest of the building, but incredibly, there's still writing on the chalkboard, as if the teacher stopped in the middle of a lesson and walked out. There's even a shriveled old apple still on the desk. As they exit the classroom back into the hallway, one of them stops. Wasn't the graffiti on the wall different before? Impossible. They must be mistaken. They keep walking and come to a stairwell. Time to explore the upper floors. They head up the stairs to the second floor and poke their head out. Everything looks to be about the same as on the first floor. They go back into the stairwell and start heading up again. It feels like they've been walking up the stairs for a long time, though. They should be all the way at the roof by now. They finally reach a door. It must lead to a taller part of the building they couldn't see from the ground outside. They open the door and see the second floor again. How could this be? The two look at each other. They've explored a lot of strange abandoned places, but nothing has creeped them out like this before. They head back down the stairs, and after only a few steps, they are back on the first floor. Something is really wrong with this place. Maybe it's best if they leave. They start walking back towards the entrance, but one grabs the other and points into a classroom. Isn't this the room they went in before? It has to be. The same apple is on the desk, but the complicated physics lesson has been erased. Now the chalkboard has just a simple phrase written on it. The children used to sing. The two scream and run out of the classroom. But which way is the entrance? The hall appears to stretch on in either direction before turning at 90-degree angles. This isn't right. The entrance was definitely visible from outside the classroom before. They pick a direction and start to run. The hallways seem to go on and on, turning in ways that should double back on themselves, but they still can't find the entrance. They try going back up through a stairwell,
but just like before, there appears to be either too many or not enough stairs between the floors. The explorers keep running, checking rooms for a way out. Somehow they keep finding that same room with the rotten apple on the desk. They're panicking now. Every time they look away, the graffiti on the wall changes, or a new classroom door appears in the hall. They keep running though, turning corner after corner after corner until… there it is, the entrance. But it's then that one of the explorers realizes he is all alone. He must have outran his friend. He looks at the entrance. It's so close. He starts to step towards it, but no. He can't leave his friend. He'll find him. He turns around and right in front of him is the same classroom again. The one with the apple. Only this time, his friend is in there, sitting in a desk in the middle of the room, asleep. Gathering the last of his courage, he runs into the room and tries to wake his friend, but he won't come out of his deep sleep. He pulls him out of the desk. If he won't walk out, he'll drag him out. He pulls him out of the classroom and down the hall towards the entrance. They're almost home free. He's just feet away from the door. He reaches out with his free hand and grabs the handle. Locked. He starts banging on the door, terrified that they'll be trapped in this place forever, when suddenly the doors swing open. Two stern-looking men in suits are standing in front of him. "You aren't supposed to be here," one of the men says, as the other picks up his friend, throws him over his shoulder, and escorts the both of them out of the school. What these urban explorers didn't know is that they had just unintentionally entered a mysterious anomaly that the SCP Foundation has designated SCP-026, a strange location that has been given the nickname After-School Retention. SCP-026 is a 3-story building that used to be a public school prior to it being shut down and condemned after both staff and students reported various anomalous properties in the building. They described hallways that seemed to change in length, classrooms disappearing and reappearing, and stairways with different numbers of steps leading up and down. The discrepancies between the building's blueprints and the reported interior were strange enough, but the former school truly came onto the Foundation's radar after the disappearances of multiple people in the area were linked to the location. It was initially believed, after sending in robots equipped with video equipment to explore the school, that the spatial anomalies were actually caused by an anomalous mental effect the space was having on people's perception, and that the physical layout of the school was not actually changing. However, additional exploration has proven that this is not the case. The physical space of the school does in fact seem to change, and even the exploration robots are affected by this shifting geometry. The inside of the school is covered in a substantial amount of graffiti, and most of it is the type you'd expect to see in any abandoned space. Gang signs, names, and street art, for example. But it appears to fade in and out and will change location. The writing on the chalkboards in the classroom appears to do the same, and just like the graffiti, much of what is written on the chalkboards is what you would expect to find in a school. Most of the writing relates to basic subjects like math, literature, and biology. However, some of the subjects that have appeared are highly advanced and out of place in a non-university setting, such as the notes on quantum entanglement that were found on a chalkboard. Bizarrely, the phrase, "the children used to sing," has been found multiple times in a variety of places around the building, though researchers are still left without an answer as to what it means or what significance it holds. But the anomalous nature of the writing inside of SCP-026 doesn't stop there. The written content of books, notepads, and other pieces of paper brought into the school have been observed to disappear, leaving blank pages behind, only for the writing to reappear as graffiti or on the chalkboards. It is unknown why or how this is happening, but those working within SCP-026 are advised to be careful of what written materials they bring inside. Multiple unconscious persons have also been found in the building. Several of the people found in the school have been identified as either former students or faculty of the school, including teachers and janitors, all of whom had been reported missing in the years following the school's closure. Despite some of them disappearing as long as 10 years after the school closed, when they are found inside SCP-026, they appear much younger than they should be, with the majority being high school aged and dressed in the style of the school's dress code in the time before it was shut down. It is currently not known how they ended up inside of SCP-026 or why they present as being a younger version of themselves. Attempts to wake unconscious people while still inside the school are always unsuccessful. However, once they are transported outside of SCP-026, they will immediately awaken. All have displayed signs of confusion in their brief moments of consciousness, before quickly dying from what appears to be severe dehydration. Their bodies will then experience rapid advanced decomposition. No useful information on the nature of SCP-026 has been gleaned from any of these subjects in the brief period after removing them from the school that they are conscious and alive. There have also been several cases of D-Class personnel who had participated in SCP-026 research disappearing from Foundation control, only to be found within the school at a later date. All are found sleeping and experience the same fate as the others who mysteriously appear within the school. The same inability to wake up while inside the school appears to also apply to those who enter SCP-026 and fall asleep, though they do not suffer the same gruesome fate upon being removed from the site and waking. Such was the case for a Foundation agent who, during a routine security check of the site, was found sleeping in the entranceway of the school by his partner. They were unable to wake the agent up, and he was moved outside the building. As soon as he was outside of SCP-026, the agent regained consciousness and appeared to be in a state of extreme agitation. In later interviews, he reported that he had dreamed he was in a strange classroom, and the same dream has been reported by all subjects who have fallen asleep in the school, as well as by the D-Class personnel who were later found inside. They all describe that in the dream, they are sitting inside of a classroom that closely resembles those found in SCP-026, though in the dream it is in a condition that matches how it likely appeared while it was still a functioning school. The bell rings, but no one moves, and raising their hand does not get the teacher's attention. Everyone is just sitting silently. If they try to leave the classroom, they find the doors locked. They then notice what is really off about the dream. Everything is in black and white, except for the dreamer, who looks down at their own hands and realizes that they are in color. Just as they begin to realize that they are dreaming, and that they are the one who is out of place, they wake up. This dream will persist, recurring over and over, and each time it takes the dreamer longer and longer to realize that they are dreaming. They also notice each time that their hands are a little more gray. Research into SCP-026 is ongoing, and all potential entrances, including both doors and windows, are to remain locked and boarded up in between investigative missions. Alarms have been placed around the location to alert Foundation personnel in the event that civilians or any other unauthorized personnel gain entry to the site. Due to the fact that even with these precautions, people continue to be found within SCP-026, and there has not yet been a reliable way discovered to prevent it, this anomaly has been classified as Euclid. While you do not appear to be at risk of any serious danger if you have not previously fallen asleep in SCP-026, pay attention to your dreams. And if at any time you find yourself back in a classroom setting where things seem, well, off, contact the nearest SCP Foundation personnel to receive Class A amnestics in order to minimize any risk of you experiencing an after-school retention.
All he could see were glimpses, flashes of movement, but he could clearly make out that there was a girl. He could see the man walk up behind her and slip a bag over her head. There was a struggle, a body being dragged through the dark, and then the sound of a shovel scraping against the hard dirt. The body is thrown into the shallow hole, and as the dirt begins to rain down on her face, her eye opens up. The boy's eyes open too, and he sits up with a panicked jolt. Shaky and covered in sweat, he looks around his dark room and realizes that it was only a dream. The entire morning as the boy gets ready, rides the bus, and sits through school, all he can think about is the dream and the girl. A group of teenage girls are out for a ride in one of their father's sports car convertible. They're having too much fun and driving much too fast down the dark country roads. It doesn't take much. It never does. Just the shadow of an animal bolting across the road, but it's enough to make the driver jerk the wheel, causing the car to lose control. All of the girls scream, but none more than the one who is tossed from the sliding, spinning car. The girls stand around their dead friend and make a solemn pact. No one here will ever know that she was with them. But what will they do with her? One of them points towards the woods, and everyone turns to look at the dilapidated shed. As the girls, now dirty from their long night of digging and then filling a hole, emerge from the shed into the dim morning light, none of them are aware that beneath the dirt, the girl is still breathing. The boy gasps for air and struggles in the dark. He throws the blankets off of him before realizing that he is safe in his own bed. Another breakfast, another ride to school, another day of classes where the boy can think of nothing but the girl from his dreams. Who is she? He's never seen her in his life, he's sure of it. But then why does she keep appearing in his dreams? The boy is snapped out of his deep train of thought by the teacher slapping his desk, and he apologizes before focusing on his studies once again. The look on the woman's face is a mix of sadness and annoyance. She doesn't know how much longer she can go on like this. It never stops. How can someone cough so much? The woman sits in her chair and tries to push away the same thought that comes to her over and over, that it would be better for both of them if it would just end. The girl coughs loudly in her bed. The disease has ravaged her lungs, and it takes all of her willpower not to scratch at the burning, itching sores on her face and chest. She looks towards the door with dazed eyes and sees her mother enter the room. She's carrying a tray with soup, just like she always does at this time, even though she has no appetite at all. As her mother gets closer, she can see that the tray is empty, and it isn't a tray in her hands. It's a pillow. The girl can barely muster a scream as the woman places the pillow over her daughter's face. As the mother walks out of the old shed in the backyard and towards the house, she stops for a moment. Can she hear the sound of coughing coming from the shed? That morning at breakfast, the boy's father tells him in no uncertain terms that he doesn't want to hear any more about the girl. It's just a dream and he needs to put it out of his mind. What he needs to be focusing on is school. The note from his teacher said that he isn't paying attention in class, and if that keeps up, he's going to have much bigger problems. The boy promises no more about the girl. As the boy stares out the bus window, it isn't his fault that thoughts about his dream rush into his head, because as the bus drives along the country roads, he catches a glimpse of something down a long, tree-covered driveway. It's the house from his dream. The shed door opens with a creak, allowing a sliver of light from the full moon to fall inside. The boy enters the shed as quietly as he can and goes inside. He soon emerges with his bike and a shovel strapped to his back before riding away from his own backyard into the night. The boy stops his bike at the bottom of the driveway leading up to the old abandoned house. He rides up the drive and doesn't even consider stopping at the house. His destination is somewhere else. The boy lets his bike fall to the ground in the backyard and stares at it. It's the shed he's seen so many times before, despite never seeing it in person. It's dark and quiet, the shed silhouetted against the large, bright moon. He approaches the only door on the small shed and reaches for the handle. It opens with a loud, rusty squeak. The boy takes out a flashlight and turns it on, illuminating the shed's interior. Inside is nothing except for a wooden bench sitting on the dirt floor. But wait, there is something else. A spot on the ground appears different, blackened, almost as if it were burned. This is the spot, though. This is the place the boy keeps seeing in his dreams. He knows she's down there. She needs his help. The boy thrusts his shovel down into the dirt, but it doesn't even scratch the surface. The ground is cold and hard. He strikes down again, and the shovel pierces into the dirt. The shovel suddenly falls to the ground, though, as the boy begins to cough. He drops to his knees as the coughing becomes a fit. He can't stop, and now he can't breathe. It feels like his throat is filling with something. He falls to the ground, still coughing as he feels whatever is filling his throat and lungs moving and vibrating. The final great hacking cough, he unleashes a swarm of creatures from his mouth. He lies in the dirt, struggling but unable to get any air, as the buzz of thousands of locusts drowns out his final noises. It's no surprise that what this young man ran into wasn't a dream at all, but an interaction with an anomaly that has since been classified as SCP-4595, but also has the quite simple and appropriate name of Witch. SCP-4595 is the designation given to a small room located inside of a woodshed that is itself found behind a home near the town of Jasper, Indiana. The house appears to have been abandoned for some time, and there are no reliable records of who the home's most recent or original owners were. The only item inside the woodshed is a simple, rough-hewn wooden bench, though at the time of the anomaly's discovery, 2 other objects were found as well. The first was a small shovel, the type that might be used for gardening. The shovel appears to be ordinary in every way, except for the very tip, which has what looks to be a blood stain on it, though tests have been unable to retrieve any genetic material from the discoloration. The second object was a small human skeleton. The body of the deceased person was removed from the woodshed, and an autopsy revealed that it had belonged to an adolescent male, roughly 11 to 13 years old.
While the exact cause of death was unable to be determined, it is extremely likely that it was due to the anomalous effects that SCP-4595 produces, but more on those in a moment. Further examination of the woodshed reveals that the word witch has been scrawled on the door with charcoal, though it is unknown who wrote the message and whether it is meant to serve as a warning or has some other purpose. It is highly likely, though, that the word is referring to the final element of SCP-4595, the body that is buried beneath the woodshed's dirt floor. Ground-penetrating imaging tools were brought in to investigate the shed, and researchers discovered that underneath one portion of the floor that appears to have been scorched at some point, a body is buried roughly 1 meter beneath the surface, which has since been designated as SCP-4595-A. Scans have revealed the body to be a humanoid figure, vaguely feminine in appearance. Its limbs are twisted in a painful and unnatural manner, and there are several large wounds present on its face, chest, and neck. But perhaps strangest of all is that despite evidence at the site pointing to the location not having been disturbed for many years, the corpse buried beneath does not seem to show any signs at all of decomposition, still appearing as it most likely did at the time it was interred in the ground. You are most likely asking yourself why the SCP Foundation has relied solely on subterranean imaging in order to assess the state of SCP-4595-A, and why they don't simply dig up the anomalous corpse. The reason why they haven't is due to the anomalous effects present at the site. Testing on SCP-4595 has concluded that anyone who enters the shed and remains there for any substantial amount of time will begin to experience a number of effects. First, they will start to feel paranoid, getting the impression that someone is watching them. This purely mental effect is quickly followed by a physical one, where the individual's skin will start to itch. Those who linger in SCP-4595 long enough will eventually begin to violently scratch at themselves in an attempt to relieve the itchiness. These effects, while very uncomfortable, will eventually subside if they leave the location, and it is very likely that they are meant to serve as a warning of what will happen if one partakes in the most dangerous aspect of SCP-4595, which is disturbing the body buried beneath it. Anyone who attempts to impact SCP-4595-A by attempting to dig it up or otherwise remove it from the location will quickly experience a horrendous anomalous effect. The individual will soon find that they are experiencing a shortness of breath, and soon will begin coughing and choking and be unable to breathe at all. This is due to a phenomenon in which any empty space in their chest cavity, lungs, airways, stomach, and intestines will completely fill with Schistocerca gregaria, better known as the desert locust. The insects will continue to appear within the individual's body until they expire, a process that typically takes mere minutes. Any locusts that manage to escape the individual's body, most often through the mouth and nose, will disappear into a vapor that quickly dissipates the moment they cross the threshold of the woodshed's doorway. So far, no method has been determined that can prevent any of SCP-4595's effects, and for the time being, no personnel are allowed to enter the anomalous shed except for testing purposes. But even in those cases, the disturbance of SCP-4595-A is not allowed. Due to the relative ease with which the Foundation can secure the site and is able to prevent anyone from entering, it has been classified as safe, with the additional disruption class of Dark and the risk class of Warning. Just what is SCP-4595? Is the SCP-4595-A body a victim, doomed to an eternity beneath this ramshackle shed? Or is it a monster, sealed away for some unknown purpose, the only warning for us to stay away being a single word on the door? Maybe one day we'll finally know the answer to why SCP-4595 is only known as the Witch.
Imagine a gaping maw that could swallow you whole. Not just you, but any creature of any size. Imagine a creature capable of constant transformation and evolution, taking any traits it needs from its prey. It is indestructible, intelligent, unstoppable, the perfect organism. And would you believe me if I told you it was downright adorable? A little boy wanders through a toy store, a small wad of money in hand, searching for the perfect thing to play with. Desperate to help quell some of his summer vacation boredom, his parents gave him a little cash and brought him to the store to pick out a new distraction. But what will he choose? A superhero action figure? A toy car? Some brightly colored plastic bricks to build with? None of it seems quite right. The truth is, he doesn't really want a toy, so much as he wants someone to play with. But his parents don't get the summer off like he does, and they don't have the time to entertain him in between the seemingly endless meetings and phone calls. He's just about to give up and tell his parents that there isn't anything he wants, when he suddenly spots a friendly, plush face peering out from between a few remote control trucks. He reaches out his hand to touch the soft fabric, only for the toy's face to meet his hand halfway. Toddles off of the shelf on short little legs, bumping its head against the boy's hand like a cat asking for pets. The boy grants the toy's request, patting it gently on the head, and it emits a high-pitched sound like a little meow, crawling closer and pressing itself against his leg affectionately. The boy beams, scarcely able to believe his luck. This isn't a toy at all. It's a new friend. There isn't a price tag on the soft creature or a barcode that a cashier could scan. Is he supposed to pay for it? Anxious about the possibility of doing something wrong, but even more afraid that he won't get to bring his new friend home after all, he places the money on the shelf where the creature came from, then scoops it into his arms. Delighted to be held, it falls into a peaceful sleep, and by the time the boy rejoins his parents at the front of the store, it looks to them as if he bought himself an ordinary plush toy. It isn't the most adventurous pick by any means, but they haven't seen him this happy in a while, so they don't ask any further questions. That is, until it starts to move of its own free will. Immediately, the boy's screaming mother starts chasing the impossible creature with a broom. It gives a desperate "meep" and tries to avoid her onslaught, but its four little legs can only carry it so far. It needs some kind of boost to escape, and luckily, it finds one, in the form of a dead cockroach lying underneath the kitchen table. The plush creature's thin mouth expands, swallowing the dead cockroach whole. Immediately, 2 extra legs, giving it a total of 6, grow out of the creature's flank. 6 legs. Yes, that's more like it. It scuttles away at great speed, chasing its way up the wall as the boy's mother screams in horror. But that won't dissuade the father. He's taken up his double-barreled shotgun and unloads 2 slugs into the creature. The force knocks it off the wall, making it tumble to the ground. But despite taking the brute force of a powerful shotgun, it somehow still lives. It skitters away at full speed as the father, loading 2 more slugs, gives chase. It escapes through the doggy door, the father and his screaming wife hot on its heels. Luckily for the creature, there's another boon just outside the house, a dead pigeon that had met its demise in an unfortunate collision with the living room window a few hours earlier. The creature doesn't waste any time. Its impossibly elastic mouth stretches open and swallows the pigeon whole, the decaying bird disappearing into the darkness. As soon as the creature's mouth closes, it starts to change again. Its extra legs disappear, and it begins to take on a more bird-like shape, with wings and tail feathers that help it take flight. The door swings open, and the creature swoops into the air. Not to be deterred or dishonored, the father levels his shotgun again and takes aim. Boom! The blast hits the now flying creature again, sending it spinning through the air with a high-pitched squeak. It doesn't understand why these people are being so mean to it, after it was allowed so warmly into their home not long ago. Despite being shot with a shotgun twice, it is still unharmed, just a little shocked. When it lands, it does so on the side of a wooded road to catch its breath. All that flying worked up a powerful hunger, and luckily for the creature, there's a nearly intact deer carcass laying on the grassy verge nearby. Not long before, it had been sent on an express trip to the afterlife by the grill of an SUV. Waste not, want not, the creature thinks. The creature's mouth expands and devours the deer, despite the deer being several times its own size. Once the less than fortunate fawn has been consumed, the creature sprouts 4 long, majestic legs and a little cotton tail, before galloping off into the woods. No, don't worry, you haven't completely lost your mind. You've just witnessed SCP-4966 in the wild. And if that story was a little too much for you, I regret to inform you that this case file gets far, far stranger from there. SCP-4966 is a quadrupedal stuffed animal constructed from gray fabric. It also just so happens to be alive. Any attempts to pierce this fabric and examine the creature's contents have failed. It appears to be essentially indestructible. After dissection failed, the Foundation attempted to examine the internal structures of SCP-4966's body using X-rays, but it seemed to show a complete lack of skeleton or musculature, or anything else that would allow the creature to move as it does. Aside from 2 black eyes and a woven mouth, SCP-4966 has no visible markings or orifices on its body. Its vocalizations resemble that of a kitten, and its disposition is highly social. If it does not receive socialization on a regular basis, the creature will become anxious and withdrawn. Just as cats are known for mirroring the behavior of the fellow felines and human owners, SCP-4966 will imitate the actions of other entities it spends time with. It does not appear to need food, water, or air, but will eat, drink, and breathe if in the presence of an entity doing the same. There is, however, one scenario in which SCP-4966 will eat regardless of the behavior of other entities in the area. When the creature is presented with the corpse of an organism, it will extend its mouth to an anomalous degree and consume the body whole. The creature's body will bulge and stretch around its meal, but the density of its plush skin remains the same throughout the process. There appears to be no size limit on the corpses it can consume, as the creature was once witnessed consuming an adult blue whale's body during one particularly ambitious test. Once SCP-4966 has completely enveloped a given corpse, its body will slowly return to its original size. During this transition phase, the creature will display changes to its morphology, consistent with the characteristics of its most recent meal. These alterations vary widely, but the existing facial features and gray coloration will always remain unchanged. This process goes on for approximately 4 hours, at which point the creature will regurgitate some manner of biological waste composed of various elements of the original organism. If this process is hard for you to wrap your head around, I can relate. Perplexed by this entity's physiology and the manner in which it feeds, I attempted to uncover the experiment log for SCP-4966. I was unable to access it in its entirety, but did get my hands on several excerpts that I found quite illuminating. They answered absolutely none of my initial questions, but were thoroughly entertaining to read just the same. I won't keep you in suspense. Allow me to elaborate. In one experiment, a deceased adult male timber rattlesnake was placed in front of SCP-4966. The creature quickly devoured it and began to change. Its torso extended 150 centimeters longer than it previously had, and its abdomen terminated in a visibly developed tail and rattle. After lengthening in this way, the creature used its new shape to snake around the limbs and bodies of attending researchers. It did not wrap tightly enough to restrict blood flow, but instead appeared to be interested in providing the researchers with hugs. The rattle was shaking at a near constant rate throughout this process, not as a warning of impending peril, but more in the manner that a dog might wag its tail when excited. When 4 hours had passed, SCP-4966 proceeded to regurgitate a mass of decomposing keratin and liquefied organic matter. During another test, SCP-4966 was fed an adult female lionfish at an advanced stage of decomposition. In spite of the fish's venomous spines, SCP-4966 suffered no adverse effects when consuming it. After swallowing its unappetizing meal, SCP-4966 developed a pair of pectoral fins, a rear fin, and a large dorsal fin that was constructed of several long spines. SCP-4966 struggled to move with these fins, primarily flopping along the ground like a fish out of water. A chemical analysis of the spines matched the composition of lionfish venom, and the researchers avoided touching the creature for the remainder of the test. When it was time to regurgitate, SCP-4966 spat up some broken spines and liquefied organic matter. With reptiles and fish taken care of, the research team decided to get a little bit wild and introduced SCP-4966 to some plant matter. Frankly, I'm glad to see it getting a well-balanced diet and eating some greens for once. Well, browns, really. It was presented with a pile of deceased sycamore maple leaves. SCP-4966 consumed one single leaf, then immediately regurgitated it. Not a fan of vegetables, I suppose. It spent the remainder of the test playing with the pile of leaves, climbing up onto its provided furniture, then diving into the leaves again and again, emitting high-pitched, gleeful vocalizations. During another test, a severely damaged female ostrich corpse was presented to SCP-4966. Still, the extent of the degradation did not seem to impact SCP-4966's anomalous ability. Because upon consumption, the creature's legs extended approximately 1.3 meters, developing 2 large toes, and its head extended approximately 1.2 meters upward, forming a large, curved neck. A pair of featherless wings sprouted from the sides of SCP-4966's torso. The creature attempted to fly using these wings, but much like the ostrich that had imbued it with them in the first place, it was sadly flightless. Upon regurgitating several shattered portions of bone and a large amount of liquefied organic matter, it reverted to its usual form. During another experiment, SCP-4966 was presented with the head of a male adult eastern moose. taxidermied and well preserved. SCP-4966 quickly consumed this taxidermy, no doubt missing from some tackily decorated hunting lodge, and began to transform. It developed large antlers, approximately 1.4 meters across. Due to the size of these antlers, relative to SCP-496's head and the rest of its body, its sense of balance and mobility were severely hindered, causing it to wobble with every step. Additionally, it developed large ears that, due to a lack of structural support, could not remain upright, and instead flopped down around the creature's head. I only wish that the experiment log had included a photo because, to be perfectly frank, the resulting effect sounds utterly adorable. Less adorable is what SCP-4966 regurgitated after the test, a large, compact mass of metal, wood pulp, and shattered bone. Curious to see how close an item needed to be to an actual corpse to be effective, the researchers provided SCP-4966 with a pair of genuine leather boots. This was, I assume, an attempt to see if SCP-4966 would recognize these as part of a deceased cow or not. The answer, it would appear, is not. SCP-4966 approached the boots curiously, lightly biting the toe of the left boot as if tasting it. Then it moved on to the right boot, gently biting the toe, then giving up on eating them. SCP-4966 knocked over the right boot, climbed inside of it, and promptly fell asleep. Soft snoring could be heard from within for the next hour. At this point in my research, I was prompted to enter some additional security credentials. Luckily, through methods I don't feel especially comfortable disclosing here, I was able to obtain these very credentials and continued my investigation. What secrets could a sentient plush toy, albeit an anomalous omnivorous one, have that would require this level of secrecy? I know that curiosity killed the cat, but I was banking on the probability that satisfaction would bring it back, as well as the fact that I am rather notably lacking in feline attributes. So I proceeded. It seems that after exhausting all other species, the research staff decided to provide SCP-4966 with a human corpse, that of D-01763 to be exact. When SCP-4966 consumed this body, there were no apparent physical alterations to the creature at all. However, it did begin to vocalize, speaking for the first time in recognizable, although slightly incoherent English. Blessed with the ability to communicate clearly for the first time, the entity made several complaints about its enclosure, specifically the low-quality material of its bedding. But then, it revealed something fascinating. When it consumes a deceased human, SCP-4966 is able to access the memories of that person. It also apparently gains the ability to speak at the level of a young child. This capacity for speech is lost when the organic matter of the meal is regurgitated, but the memories remain. A compelling enough discovery on its own, but what happened next was truly shocking. Shortly after this foray into human experimentation with SCP-4966, the Chaos Insurgency staged a raid on Site-17, during which they attempted to gain access to several anomalies, including SCP-4966. This raid proved unsuccessful, but its occurrence, and the discovery of a Chaos Insurgency document containing classified Foundation information on SCP-4966 raised several concerning questions. How did the Insurgency gain this information? Why were they so interested in SCP-4966? And how did they know where it was contained? Several corpses of Insurgency members were provided to SCP-4966 in an attempt to uncover the answers. Once it regained the ability to speak, Dr. Randall Bannock conducted an interview with SCP-4966. For the first 2 hours and 14 minutes of the interview, SCP-4966 was not helpful in the slightest. It focused its attention on a relentless demand for snacks, or, as it calls them, munchies. After giving the creature 7 biscuits, Dr. Bannock was beginning to lose his grip and begged it to cooperate. It responded with yet another complaint.
I want a better bed, too. The one you guys have is lumpy. Make a bed out of munchies so I can eat it when I get hungry.
Dr. Bannock promised the creature another biscuit if it could explain how the Insurgency knew its location.
The red shooty people? They found the room with my name on it.
Dr. Bannock sighed, then reworded his question to ask how the group knew its item number.
I was in the room, so the room had my name. They made lots of banging on the door and noisy noises. I was sleeping, but it was too loud and the bed was lumpy.
Dr. Bannock promised the creature that a new bed would be delivered the following day, then continued his line of questioning. How did the Insurgency know where the building was? The creature refused to answer until it received an additional biscuit.
The Pat people who visit me. They tell the wed people stuff through the head pods.
Understandably, Dr. Bannock required clarification on the identities of the, quote, pat people.
Lots of people give me pats. The white coat woman who gives me the toys is nice. I like her. She gave me the ball with the bell in it, and it makes a ringy noise. The orange person that gives me lots of pats, but his face keeps being different between pat times. He gives me pats, though, so it's a good orange. You give me munchies and smell like a cake, and that's a good munchie. Also, you said you were going to get me a good bed, but...
Dr. Bannock interrupted the creature here, redirecting it to the topic at hand. After bribing SCP-4966 with 2 more biscuits, it continued to try and explain.
I think they use the head squishies, like the one in the red guy I munched, and the one in the spiky stripey, but that one wasn't too good.
This only served to add more confusion, and Dr. Bannock asked for clarification. Did the creature mean they used their brains?
I don't know about squishy parts. I think the big part that looks like a watermelon is used to talk. I'm not an organ psychic.
At this point, rather than do what I would do and ask what on earth an organ psychic is, Dr. Bannock pressed for details on the so-called orange person that SCP-4966 ate.
The orange person was colder and was kinda too mushy. The red people had lots more stuff about shooty guns, but I don't like to hurt people, so I say no thank you, mister. The orange person had a lot more about like being stuck in a room, and I don't think they ever got to taste the crispy crunch of a munchie, which is sad.
Dr. Bannock acknowledged the sadness of life without the joys of a crispy crunch, then continued his line of questioning about the brain-based communication between D-Class and Insurgency members.
1 second. I'm gonna do a real big think.
SCP-4966 sat in silence for several minutes, humming to itself in confusion.
I think I found something from the wed people, but it's a bit scrambly and they use some big words I don't know. They keep saying words about sonic chips, but they aren't eating any chips and I'm confused. Wait, I think the orange people had the sonic chips already. Maybe they forgot them at the store because they were saying stuff about not noticing the sonic chips. I want that munchy sonic chips like the orange person gets.
Eventually, after a lot of prodding and several tangents regarding the demand for additional munchies, SCP-4966 listed the identification numbers of 14 D-Class personnel. Autopsies of each of these personnel revealed a small device in the cerebellum capable of psionic transmissions. As a reward for its help in uncovering the cause of a concerning security breach, SCP-4966 was given a bag of Tostitos brand tortilla chips, which it promptly consumed with great enthusiasm. SCP-4966 is kept within a modified humanoid containment cell, sized appropriately for the free movement of a domestic cat or creature of similar size. The cell is furnished with several pieces of cushioned furniture and recreational objects such as climbing towers, soft plush toys, and small plastic objects such as toy dinosaurs are also placed throughout the room. In addition to its toys, SCP-4966 is to be given socialization on a tri-weekly basis by the on-site researchers. Any tests involving SCP-4966 must be approved by Dr. Bannock. Several members of personnel have expressed an interest in providing SCP-4966 with additional toys and recreational objects, but the Foundation has insisted that these be purchased using personal funds rather than tapping into the Foundation's budget. As far as I know, SCP-4966 lives a relatively peaceful life in the aftermath of its brush with the Chaos Insurgency. But it just goes to show that in the world of the SCP Foundation, nothing is ever as simple as it first appears. Even a soft, cuddly, squishy little plush toy can be the key to uncovering a web of secrets, conspiracy, and espionage. I'm just glad he got a nice snack after.
A knife in the dark, bloody teeth, and an appetite about to bring an end to one of history's most infamous monsters. The year is 1888, and the streets of London are teeming with tension and fear. In the daytime, people struggle to find work, fighting each other tooth and nail for scraps of opportunity. The sunlight only serves to illuminate the grime and misery, the workhouses and the factories, the smokestacks pumping poison into the sky. At night, though, it's even worse. The gas lamps provide only ghostly wisps of dim light, just enough to see a stranger's shadow from the corner of your eye, but not enough to see if the glint of something shiny in his hand is his pocket watch or his knife. You might glance over your shoulder for a closer look, but he's already disappeared into the fog, if he was ever even there at all. These streets feel haunted, even on the quietest of nights. But lately, there are rumors swirling in the air of something far worse than a ghost skulking through the alleys. More real than the devil, more evil than any ordinary man. there's a killer on the prowl, and his name is Jack the Ripper. At first, most citizens refused to take notice of his presence, writing off his victims as women of ill repute, bound to meet a dreadful demise sooner or later. But as the bodies piled up, the sheer brutality of the killings became impossible to ignore. Now, everyone is on edge, particularly if their daily business takes them to London's East Side, where the murders began. Once hoped to be a place of opportunity for those traveling to London from afar to seek their fortunes, Whitechapel has become a den of sin and terror. No one can breathe easy here, not until the Ripper is caught, if he ever is. There are theories, of course, accused noblemen, surgeons, butchers, and doctors. Whoever the culprit is, one thing is certain: he knows his way around a knife. Still, no one suspect seems to stick, and no one theory is compelling enough to lead to an arrest. Privately, behind locked doors where no policeman can hear them whispering, the people of Whitechapel are beginning to wonder whether the Ripper will ever be found. Perhaps this nightmare won't cease until the streets run red with blood. But even in the middle of hell on earth, day-to-day matters must still be attended to. So even as he worries for the lives of his customers and his own livelihood, the owner of a local pub posts a job listing, seeking a new cook. He doesn't need anything fancy, he can't pay for much, just a fellow who knows his way around a kitchen and can cook up decent enough food without accidentally slicing his fingers off. Still, he's not sure there's anyone out there who would be too happy to take a job so close to Jack the Ripper's domain at the moment. But the next day, as he comes in to unlock the doors and set up for the day, he finds an applicant waiting for him outside, grinning ear to ear. He's a massive fellow, towering over the pub owner at a height he's never seen before outside of a circus performer on stilts. But he greets the pub owner with a firm handshake and follows him inside, though he has to hunch a great deal to fit through the door. It's not as if there's a line of applicants out the door, so the pub owner goes ahead and hires him as the new cook. The cook is a Frenchman, but he won't hold it against him. That night, when the pub opens for business, the new cook gets right to work. From his disposition, one would never know he's working for pennies in a dingy pub in the most dangerous part of town. He bustles around the modest kitchen, chopping meat and singing in a warm, loud voice that carries through the whole building, bringing some much-needed cheer to the exhausted customers. Pretty soon, they get a taste of the new cook's work: mutton and potatoes and juicy meat pies. Whoever this new worker is, the crowd is pleased to have him around. The owner does advise the cook to stay in the kitchen, though. His food and his singing may be popular, but his appearance might frighten the already skittish regulars. There's plenty to be afraid of these days, no need to add a giant to the mix. When the pub closes up for the night, the owner stops for a moment to chat with his new cook. He can't help but be curious about the man, where he came from, what brought him to London. The cook tells him, tearfully, that he was once a soldier in the French army, but that he lost his military career following a tragic accident he refused to disclose the details of. After that, he worked in a circus, then as a private chef in the home of a wealthy French family, until he was thrown out over a forbidden love affair with his boss's daughter. The pub owner isn't sure he believes a word of it, but he nods along just the same. He asks the cook when he first arrived in London. The 1st of April, he says, and with that, he heads off home, leaving the pub owner alone with his thoughts, the color draining from his face. April 1st was only 2 days before the first Jack the Ripper victim was discovered. It couldn't be. Could it? As the pub owner embarked on his journey home, he replayed the image of the cook's work that night over and over in his mind. The man was plenty competent with a knife, that was certain. He was strong enough to kill quickly, too. With those hands, he could squeeze the life out of someone before they even got the chance to scream. He could have done it. But why would he? He seemed like such a friendly man, odd though he was. And he was odd, almost frightening. He had clearly lied about his past as well. What reason would he have for doing that, if not to conceal a dark and terrible secret? The pub owner lies awake all night, horrific visions of his new cook keeping him from sleep. The next day, the pub owner's suspicions begin to fester and grow. He notices things he didn't pick up on before, the strange way the cook always speaks through his teeth, the deft way that he handles a butcher knife, slicing through the cuts of meat that he brings to the pub himself. What butcher is he going to? Where's he finding so much meat in such scarce times? The owner shudders at the possibilities. His customers are starting to take notice of his change in attitude, too. They see the sweat dotting his brow, his furtive glances toward the kitchen, and the way his hands shake when he brings them their plates of food. Several customers corner the owner and demand an explanation.
These days, they can't let any unusual behavior go on for long. Something sinister could be afoot after all. The pub owner relents and confesses his suspicions that his newly hired cook might be the Ripper himself. Not only that, but he's afraid the meat he's been preparing might not be sourced from any livestock, but from more of the Ripper's victims. It was an unwise choice to admit these fears to a group of men driven to the edge of reason by their own dread, bodies in the streets, and a bit too much ale. They swarm the kitchen to confront the cook and are shocked at the sight of the behemoth they find there. The cook greets them with his usual smile, but they aren't having any of it. They attack him in spite of his intimidating size, pummeling him with their fists. The cook tries to reason with the men, but they are determined to get an answer out of him, and his previously unfailing smile falters. He opens his mouth wide and, in a truly shocking display, gobbles up one of the men in 2 quick bites. He spits out a shoe, and it flies across the room, hitting another one of the men in the face. There's silence for a long moment, and then sheer pandemonium. The surviving men tear out of the pub, spilling into the streets in a drunken, panic-stricken mob. Wiping his mouth, the cook turns to see his boss, staring at him with wide eyes, frozen to the spot in fear. With a polite bow, the cook gives his resignation, apologizes for the disruption, and turns to see himself out. Meanwhile, the pub patrons are cornering a policeman, demanding he follows them to the location of a giant, man-eating monster who they believe to be the Ripper. The policeman laughs in their faces and advises them to head home and sleep off their drinks before they get themselves into any more trouble. With a full belly, but without a job, and without anywhere else to go, the cook ducks out the door to the pub and begins to stroll slowly down the dark, dingy streets. Up ahead, he sees a woman walking alone. She drops something on the ground, a small coin purse. She doesn't notice it fall, and keeps walking. But the cook is very much a gentleman, in spite of his cannibalistic indiscretion before. He hurries over and bends to pick it up. When he looks back at the woman, he sees a man creeping up behind her. The shadowy man draws a knife and lifts his arm, preparing to strike. The cook cries out to warn the woman, and she turns, letting out a blood-curdling scream at the sight of both the would-be killer and the giant, with blood still dripping from his chin. She picks up her skirts and runs as fast as she can, disappearing down a nearby alley and out of sight. The cook still holds her coin purse in his massive hand, but there's no way she'll come back to retrieve it now. The man with the knife turns on the cook with a roar of primal rage. He slashes at the giant with his knife, but it merely glances off of the enormous man's tough skin, not drawing so much as a single drop of blood. He tries again and again, but fails to make even a mark. Frustrated, exhausted, and still a little bit hungry, the giant grabs hold of the attempted killer, lifts him into the air, opens his mouth wide, and swallows him whole in a single gulp. The knife, still stained with the blood of his previous victims, clatters to the ground. The cook sighs and tucks the coin purse into his pocket. Then he continues on his way, walking out of London and on to the next chapter of his life's grand adventure. He has no idea that his climactic meal in Whitechapel was none other than the infamous Jack the Ripper, and the people of London will never know of the unintentional act of heroism he committed that day. They will only remember the fear and the sight of a giant devouring a man alive. But soon enough, that will fade from memory, replaced with relief when no new victims are found, and then replaced again with a mystery that will endure for hundreds of years. Though that cook was no Ripper, he was also clearly no ordinary man. Before they decided to drive him out of town, the people of Whitechapel had, unbeknownst to them, been eating and drinking with SCP-082. SCP-082 is, according to his genetic makeup, a perfectly ordinary human. However, one look at SCP-082 makes it clear that he is far from ordinary. Some sort of external process has caused him to grow to an enormous size, standing at 8 feet tall and weighing around 700 pounds. Foundation researchers are divided in opinion over the exact cause of SCP-082's unique proportions. Some theorize that it is some sort of mutation. Others propose an extreme hormone imbalance. Some believe it to be chemical in nature, while others insist that only a supernatural force could be responsible for such a dramatic deviation from the norm. Whatever the case may be, SCP-082 is a formidable and visually impressive specimen. His head is bald and slightly pointed, his chin and jaw are large and round. His nose is bulbous, and his eyes are dark and sunken. His body has a high fat content, but also contains notable muscle mass, and his physical strength should not be discounted. His forearms have a circumference of around 28 inches,
and his fists are nearly an entire foot across the knuckles. Suffice it to say, he is not the sort of opponent you would want to come up against in a fight, and certainly not someone to antagonize, though medical examinations of his body indicate that at least a few likely ill-fated individuals have tried over the years. His skin is covered with scars, and though his x-rays are difficult to read due to the density of muscle tissue, scans have indicated that there are dozens of bullets and several blades, from knives and swords alike, buried in the man's flesh. Clearly, SCP-082 has been through a great deal of hardship, but you wouldn't know it from his disposition. He is gregarious and polite, with a personality as big as the rest of him. Oh, that reminds me, I've been extremely rude. He has a name. It's Fernand. At least, that's what he says. Fernand speaks fluent French, but is proficient in English as well, though he speaks with a heavy accent. Whenever he does speak, he does so with a smile, talking through his tightly clenched and massive teeth. Occasionally, he clenches these teeth so hard that his gums will begin bleeding from the effort. The reason for this is unknown, but the SCP Foundation considers it normal behavior for Fernand, whatever that means. I have my own personal theory regarding Fernand's penchant for clenching his teeth, but I won't get into that just yet. Fernand does occasionally open his mouth all the way and separate his teeth, but only when he is eating or singing. He is quite the musical talent, serenading the SCP Foundation with his takes on well-known classical music, as well as long-forgotten drinking songs and the occasional sea shanty. He loves to sing while cooking, which he is permitted to do under strict Foundation supervision. He is allowed access to a rudimentary set of cooking implements whenever he prepares his food, including a butcher knife that he also uses to shave his unusually thick facial hair. He is given various ingredients to prepare on request, with the stipulation that these ingredients must not be too expensive or human in origin. In spite of his off-putting appearance and tendency to speak through his teeth, Fernand is easily one of the more likable anomalies contained by the Foundation. He doesn't express overt hostility like SCP-682, nor does he attempt to diagnose staff with any sort of pestilence like SCP-049. All he seemingly wants to do is cook, sing, and play dress-up. Did I mention his costume trunk yet? Well, he has one. Some of his favorite outfits include a tuxedo, complete with top hat and a monocle, a military uniform serves of the French Revolution, a ball gown that comes with an elegant fan and matching beaded purse, and a clown costume that includes a wig and a trick water-squirting flower in its pocket. New costume pieces are made on request in order to keep Fernand's morale high. According to my findings, in-house costumers are currently hard at work making Fernand a detective costume, a chef's hat, and a set of footy pajamas. Fernand is an indisputable charmer, greeting Foundation researchers with a wide smile, a joke, and more often than not, an invitation to join him for dinner. Unfortunately, those same staff members occasionally find themselves on the menu. In spite of all his endearing qualities, Fernand has the unfortunate habit of routinely snapping, giving into his voracious appetite, and eating his visitors alive. He doesn't intend to do so, and frequently expresses regret at his poor manners. After all, having company for dinner doesn't mean you eat your company, but still he can't help himself, no matter how recent his latest meal was. Though I have yet to confirm this hypothesis, I believe this cannibalistic impulse to devour others may be the reason for Fernand's constant clenching of his teeth. Whether consciously or not, I think he is attempting to hold off on attacking for as long as he can, before he inevitably succumbs to the hunger once more. When his gums bleed, it could be a sign that one of his attacks is drawing near. Again, I have yet to confirm this, but it seems entirely possible. It's unlikely that Fernand will ever be able to verify this for himself, as his connection to the truth is tenuous at best. Though he is highly intelligent in terms of his memory, puzzle-solving skills, and grasp of language, Fernand struggles to differentiate between fact and fiction when consuming media. He assumes that any movie or television show he watches is depicting a real person, and that any book he reads is essentially a biography. This doesn't limit his enjoyment of this media. On the contrary, he gets a great deal of joy from watching films and reading books, particularly works of fiction revolving around Hannibal Lecter, who Fernand has described as his favorite person, and someone he would very much like to meet one day. To make matters even more interesting, Fernand does understand the concept of lying. He's able to identify when someone is lying directly to him, and also displays signs of being a compulsive liar himself, particularly when it comes to his personal history. Over the course of his containment, he is claimed to be a vampire, a homunculus, beloved Sesame Street character Big Bird, also beloved actor and wrestler Andre the Giant,
Napoleon Bonaparte, French comic book character Obélix, the Foundation's own Dr. Bright, the Incredible Hulk, Alexander the Great, Captain Hook, and Detective Sherlock Holmes. He has also claimed at different times and once on the same day to be both Dr. Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. When called out directly on these lies, Fernand offers only this explanation: "But I only lie when it's through my teeth," which I have to admit is pretty funny. SCP-082, Fernand, is currently contained in enlarged living quarters in Armed Biocontainment Area 14. As he is unfazed by most standard weaponry, his cooperation has been ensured through deception rather than physical force. Fernand has been led to believe that he is acting king of France, placed in a secret palace for his own protection from potential assassins. Any personnel that interacts with Fernand must address him as if he were, in fact, the king of France, and any deviation from the charade is met with swift discipline. Any housekeeping done in 082's containment area must be performed by Class D personnel only, as it poses too much of a risk to non-disposable staff. Guards assigned to SCP-082's containment will receive Level 2 clearance, but are not permitted to interact directly with SCP-082, no matter how friendly he is, no matter how many knock-knock jokes he tells them, and no matter how he tries to entice them into a round of karaoke. SCP-082 is a curious mix of congenial and threatening, the consummate host who loves to sing and cook for anyone willing to sit at his table. He's also strong enough to snap a spine in half, and has teeth that can crack open skulls, a skill that he demonstrates with stomach-churning regularity. Still, he seems to genuinely enjoy the company of others, and has an earnest, playful spirit. From his giving spirit to his diet, SCP-082 really gives a new meaning to the word humanitarian. If you ever have the chance to meet him, just be careful not to let your guard all the way down, because there's a fine, fine line between being his dinner guest and being his dinner.
The SCP Foundation personnel at Area 142 didn't understand what was happening. For days, researchers and guards had been complaining about headaches and nausea. Soon, the on-site water purification system broke down. A researcher experienced multiple organ failures, and the on-site hangar completely collapsed, causing the deaths of multiple airmen. What was happening at Area 142? Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-1440, also known as The Old Man from Nowhere. SCP-1440 has the appearance of a human male, but its ethnicity and age are both unknown. When asked any details about itself or its past, including its name, birth date, or place of birth, SCP-1440 refuses to answer, though it's unknown if it is refusing to give this information, or if it simply does not know the answer to these questions. The aptly nicknamed Old Man from Nowhere appears to be around 80 years old, but in the 50 years that the SCP Foundation has been aware of its existence, SCP-1440 has not shown any signs of aging at all, and it has yet to be determined whether it is aging too slowly for a difference to be perceived in that time, or if it does not age at all, and this is its permanent appearance. But SCP-1440's lack of aging is not even the strangest thing about it. Its true anomalous nature reveals itself once it comes into contact with the human population or any man-made objects, and remains in contact with them for more than a few days. After several days of exposure, an acute adverse effect on anything and everything directly connected to humanity occurs in the vicinity of SCP-1440. Destructive events begin to happen and grow increasingly disastrous until the man-made objects are destroyed or the people in close contact are killed. The only exceptions to these destructive events are SCP-1440 itself, and its few possessions, which consist of its clothes, a sack made of unidentified material, a pack of worn playing cards, and a small glass cup. It's unknown whether these objects are somehow protected from the destructive anomalous events, or whether they are not actually man-made items. SCP-1440 seems to be aware of its anomalous effects on human populations and objects, and appears to attempt to avert destruction of them by avoiding human contact as much as possible. However, SCP-1440 is for some reason compelled to travel in what looks like a highly complex pattern, one that always eventually leads to it running into human populations, whether it wants to or not. The particulars of this pattern, both its shape and the reason why SCP-1440 feels compelled to follow it, are, as of yet, unknown. And just like the other details of its origin, the Old Man from Nowhere has not been able to provide any additional information or help. SCP-1440 has explained that the growing size of the human population and its expansion into previously uninhabited areas has made it harder and harder to avoid contact with humanity, as it follows its complex pattern of movement. SCP-1440 is not actively hostile, nor will it resist or fight back against attempts to contain it. Unfortunately for the SCP Foundation, all attempts to contain SCP-1440 have so far failed. These containment attempts have led to large losses of personnel life and Foundation resources as a result of the destructive anomalous effects that follow SCP-1440. The Old Man from Nowhere first came to the SCP Foundation's attention after SCP-1440 itself approached a Foundation researcher who was on her way to work. SCP-1440 somehow knew that this researcher worked for the Foundation and requested her assistance. When the researcher asked what kind of assistance it was looking for, it replied that it hoped the Foundation would be able to destroy it. It was brought to an SCP Foundation site for further questioning and study, which is where the destructive anomalous effects were first witnessed. The entire site was destroyed, killing multiple site personnel, as well as causing the destruction of 6 safe and Euclid-level SCP objects. So far, all other attempts to contain SCP-1440 have resulted in similar destructive events. SCP-1440 doesn't resist the SCP Foundation's attempts to contain it. During the 4th such attempt by the Foundation, SCP-1440 was brought to Area 142. The Old Man from Nowhere applauded the Foundation's ongoing efforts, but also expressed that it was for the best that it be allowed to leave, as the results for the researchers would be the same as the previous 3 attempts: death for all involved. SCP-1440 told the researcher interviewing it that its first brother had already arrived and was standing behind the researcher. It went on to explain that the brothers are different, but one and the same. They are all cruel, vengeful, and capable of holding a grudge for a long time. They are the cause of SCP-1440's misfortune, and therefore the cause of anyone who comes into contact with it. It then told the researcher that the second brother had arrived, and that time was running short. If it wasn't released soon, then the destruction would start. The researcher asked about the third brother, and questioned how much time they had since the third had apparently not yet arrived. SCP-1440 explained that the third, despite being the cruelest of all, never arrives, and that it's actually the appearance of the last brother that will somehow set the Old Man from Nowhere free. SCP-1440 has spent countless months and years searching for the third brother, trying to return something that he won from the other 2. It then made a reference to challenging death itself to a game of cards for its life, and if the researcher is ever in such a situation, they must not do what the Old Man from Nowhere did: win. At that very moment, the on-site nuclear device stored at Area 142 detonated, despite it having multiple failsafes in place that should have made such a detonation impossible. Area 142 was destroyed, and all on-site personnel were killed. SCP-1440 was spotted a week later, over 3,000 kilometers away from Area 142, showing no signs of having experienced any harm. After 3 additional containment attempts were made, and all ended in a similarly disastrous fashion, future attempts to contain SCP-1440 have been suspended indefinitely, until a suitable containment procedure that doesn't involve an unacceptable loss of resources and personnel can be found. Research and analysis of SCP-1440's traveling pattern continues, with a focus on minimizing civilian exposure to it, as does research into a way to hopefully permanently contain it in the future. Unfortunately, SCP-1440's location is currently unknown, and it has been given the object class Keter.
The sun dipped low over Lowell, Massachusetts, casting golden light across the town. At a corner hardware store, the bell above the door chimed softly, announcing a customer's arrival. The man wandered the aisles, his eyes scanning the shelves stacked with familiar tools and trinkets. Among them, something unusual caught his attention. A sleek, metallic clock sat alone on a shelf. Its design was modern, almost futuristic, and its polished surface gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The man picked it up, surprised by its weight. The clock felt alive in his hands, the ticking faint and irregular, almost hesitant. At the counter, the cashier frowned, turning the clock over in his hands.
Never seen this one before,
he muttered. With no price tag or barcode, he shrugged.
Take it. On the house.
Later that evening, the clock took its place on a mantel. Its odd rhythm filled the quiet house, a faint ticking that seemed to stutter and syncopate. As the hours passed, the ticking softened, fading into silence. At precisely 2:13 a.m., an explosion ripped through the stillness. The blast shook the neighborhood, shattering windows and causing alarms to blare. In the living room, the mantel was scorched, the clock obliterated. Scattered across the floor lay the remains of its owner, their chest torn open. Among the debris was something that didn't belong, brightly colored fragments that shimmered in the moonlight. Candy. Smoke billowed from the chimneys of Metzger's factory mill, painting the horizon in shades of gray. At the gates, workers shuffled in before dawn. Their movements were slow, their breaths shallow. The clang of the iron gate closing behind them marked the start of another endless day. Inside, the factory floor was alive with noise. Machines roared and clattered, their steel arms moving in perfect rhythm. The air was thick with the scent of oil and the metallic tang of sweat. Metzger stood on the platform above it all. His eyes swept over the workers below, cold and calculating. The roar of the machines seemed to flow through him, a sound he knew intimately.
Faster,
he said. The foreman at his side stiffened. He didn't question the command. Instead, he barked orders, his voice sharp enough to cut through the din. On the floor, the workers picked up their pace. Hands blurred as they fed the machines, faces twisted with strain. But no one dared stop. The rhythm of the factory demanded it. One worker, a boy barely old enough to be there, hesitated. His fingers fumbled over a bundle of thread, and the machine jammed, producing a metallic groan. The boy froze. His eyes darted toward the looming figure of the foreman, who was already moving toward him. The cane came down hard across the boy's shoulder. He winced, but didn't cry out.
You jam the machine, you waste time,
the foreman snapped. His cane pointed to another worker nearby.
Take his place.
The boy stumbled back, clutching his arm. The machines didn't stop. They were relentless. Metzger sat in his office. The roar of the factory floor below was a constant hum beneath his feet. He didn't mind it. It was familiar, a reminder of the work being done. His desk was covered in ledgers. Numbers filled the pages, precise and clean. Profits, losses, expenses. Metzger's pen moved steadily, each stroke deliberate. He paused only when the door creaked open behind him. The foreman stepped inside, hat in hand. He hesitated, lingering near the threshold like a man about to deliver bad news. Metzger didn't look up. He merely gestured for the foreman to speak.
There's been talk,
the foreman said. The pen stopped mid-stroke. Metzger's eyes flicked up, narrowing slightly.
Talk?
The foreman shifted his weight, glancing at the floor.
Some of the workers, they're unhappy.
Hours, conditions. Metzger leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. His hand rested on the desk, fingers tapping against the wood.
They're saying things, sir, about striking.
The room fell silent, except for the muffled roar of the machines below. Metzger's gaze didn't waver.
Stop it,
he said finally. The foreman blinked, as if the simplicity of the command caught him off guard.
Sir? Stop it,
Metzger repeated, leaning forward slightly. His voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of a blade.
Do whatever it takes. They work here because I allow it. Let them remember that.
The foreman swallowed hard.
Yes, sir.
Metzger picked up his pen again, the conversation already forgotten. That night, the factory gates stood open, their iron bars slick with mist. The machines had finally gone quiet, their relentless rhythm stilled. Metzger stood alone outside, his hands tucked behind his back. The street beyond the factory was dark, save for the faint glow of a distant gas lamp. Beneath it, shadows moved. He saw them clearly now, a small group of workers gathered in whispered conversation. Their faces were tired, but there was something else in their eyes, something sharp. defiance. Metzger watched from the shadows, his jaw tightening. Their voices were too soft to hear, but the energy was unmistakable. They were planning something. He could feel it. His breath was slow and measured as he turned back to the factory. "Let them try," he muttered. His lips curled into a faint smile. The factory gates were blocked at dawn, workers standing shoulder to shoulder, their faces pale but resolute. They carried signs hastily painted on scraps of wood, the words smudged but clear enough. Fair wages, safer conditions, no more 16-hour shifts. Inside the factory, Metzger watched from the second-floor balcony. His foreman stood behind him, shifting nervously. "They're not budging," the foreman said, his voice tense. "They will," Metzger replied, calm as ever. He gestured to the gates below. "How long can they hold out without pay? Without food?" The foreman hesitated. "Some of the townsfolk are on their side. They're collecting donations." Metzger's eyes narrowed slightly, the faintest crack in his composure. He gestured to be left alone. Metzger leaned back in his chair as the foreman left, the sound of boots fading down the hall. He reached for the ledger on his desk, flipping it open. Metzger spent hours at his desk, poring over ledgers that refused to balance. The profits he'd built his empire on were bleeding out, lost to strikes and delays. The lamp on his desk flickered, the glow barely illuminating the room. Outside, the faint echoes of chanting lingered in the cold night air. Metzger closed the ledger with a sharp snap and leaned back in his chair. The numbers were worse than he'd feared. He traced a finger along the desk's edge, his jaw tightening. "They'll break before I do," he murmured to himself. The flickering light caught his attention again, drawing his gaze. The shadows in the corner of the room seemed to stretch unnaturally. He blinked, convinced it was a trick of the failing lamp, but when he looked again, the shadows moved. "You've done well," a voice said, low and smooth. Metzger froze. His eyes darted to the corner, where a figure now stood. He hadn't heard the door open. The figure was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit that seemed to shimmer faintly, almost as though it weren't entirely solid. "You shouldn't be here," Metzger said, keeping his voice steady. The figure stepped forward, its movements deliberate. Its features were wrong. Metzger couldn't quite grasp them, as if they shifted slightly whenever he tried to focus. "I go where I'm needed," the figure said, its tone calm. "And tonight, you need me." "What do you want?" Metzger asked. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if the question amused it. "It isn't about what I want. It's about what you need." The figure gestured broadly, its hand sweeping toward the ledgers and the faint sound of protests outside. "Your empire is crumbling. You're clinging to control, but your grip is slipping." Metzger's jaw tightened. His hand rested on the desk, fingers drumming against the wood. "I've weathered worse storms," he said, though the words felt hollow. The figure leaned forward slightly, its shadow stretching unnaturally across the desk. "Not like this. You've done well with the tools at your disposal, but they're crude, outdated. I can refine them." Metzger didn't reply immediately. His gaze shifted to the flickering lamp, the tension in his shoulders growing heavier. "What are you offering?" he asked finally. The figure reached into its jacket and withdrew a slim, black case. It set the case down on the desk, its movement smooth and deliberate. "Salvation," the figure said. "Machines that never break, workers that never tire, profits that never dwindle. Your empire will rise to heights you've only dreamed of." Metzger stared at the case. His instinct told him to push it away, but his ambition kept him rooted. "And what do you want in return?" The figure's smile widened, though it wasn't reassuring. "Only what's necessary." The room grew colder, the flickering lamp casting erratic shadows. Metzger reached for the case, his fingers brushing the cool surface. It clicked open easily, revealing a single sheet of paper. The symbols on the page shimmered faintly, their shapes shifting and writhing, as if alive. Metzger leaned closer, squinting at the incomprehensible script.
"What does it say?"
he asked, his voice quieter now.
"You expect me to sign something I can't even read?"
The figure chuckled softly, a sound like metal grinding against stone.
You don't need to read it. You only need to understand this. Progress demands sacrifice. You've always known that.
The words struck like a hammer. Metzger's fingers curled into a fist, his gaze shifting from the paper to the figure.
"And if I refuse?"
he asked. The figure didn't blink. Its presence filled the room, its shadow stretching along the walls.
Then your empire falls. You become just another name forgotten by history. A lesson for the next man who dares to dream as you have.
Metzger's breath slowed. His eyes dropped back to the paper, the symbols seeming to pulse faintly, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. He picked up the pen. The weight of it felt unnatural in his hand. His name formed slowly on the page, the ink sinking into the surface as though it were alive. As the final stroke dried, the figure snapped the case shut.
You've made the right choice,
it said, stepping back. The room dimmed as the figure retreated into the shadows. By the time Metzger looked up, he was alone again. Beneath him, the floorboards hummed. The factory changed overnight. It began with the machines. They arrived without warning. Metzger had not ordered them, yet here they were, hulking, gleaming things unloaded from unmarked wagons in the dead of night. The workers whispered about them in hushed tones, their voices trembling with unease. The machines were unlike anything they had ever seen. Their surfaces gleamed unnaturally, untouched by rust or grime, and their designs defied logic. Pipes twisted at impossible angles, gears spun without power. When the workers passed too close, they swore they felt heat radiating from them, though no fire burned nearby. Metzger stood on the factory floor the morning they were installed, watching as the foreman struggled to assemble them. He did not intervene. His gaze was fixed on the largest of them all, a towering construct that dominated the center of the factory. The workers called it the Behemoth. It was a machine unlike any other, a labyrinth of twisting metal and endless conveyor belts. Pipes extended from its core, burrowing into the walls and floors, as if the factory itself were alive. Metzger's journal entry that night was brief but telling. The Behemoth does not sleep. It breathes. The first products were simple, bolts of silk so fine they shimmered in the light, tools crafted with a precision that no human hand could replicate. But the Behemoth's hunger grew. It demanded more raw material, and the workers labored endlessly to feed it. One day, the Behemoth produced something new. Metzger inspected the line personally. His eyes widened as he lifted a small, shining object from the conveyor belt. It was a toy, a delicate, mechanical bird with wings that fluttered when he turned a hidden key. He tested it once, twice. The wings moved perfectly, almost lifelike.
"Remarkable,"
he murmured. But the workers didn't share his awe. They whispered about the Behemoth in terrified tones, swearing they had heard it groan and shudder late at night. Some claimed it spoke, though they dared not repeat what it said. And then the Behemoth began to consume more than raw materials. Metzger noticed it first in the missing time cards, workers who had punched in, but never punched out.
"Where are they going?"
he asked one morning, his voice sharp as he stood before the foreman. The foreman looked away, his hands tightening around his cane.
"I haven't seen them, sir."
Metzger's eyes narrowed.
"You're lying."
The foreman swallowed, but didn't answer. The truth revealed itself soon enough. Metzger had descended to the lower levels one night, drawn by the rhythmic pounding that reverberated through the factory walls. His lantern cast jagged shadows as he followed the sound to a cavernous room he had never seen before. The Behemoth's pipes extended here, their surfaces slick with an unidentifiable substance. The pounding came from within. Metzger's lantern shook as he raised it higher, illuminating the walls. Bones. They were small, almost unrecognizable, but there was no mistaking what they were. His breath caught. The sound of footsteps behind him made him spin. Standing in the doorway was one of the new overseers, its faceless mask glinting in the light.
Metzger opened his mouth to speak, but the overseer didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as though observing him. Metzger turned and fled. The overseers became the new masters of the factory. They moved silently among the workers, their blank masks and rigid postures unnerving even the foreman. They never spoke, but their presence was enough to enforce obedience. Those who faltered or questioned too loudly were escorted away. They never returned. Metzger began spending more time in his office. He avoided the factory floor, avoiding the sight of the overseers and the sounds of the behemoth's relentless hunger. One day, he noticed the silence in his home. His wife had not called for him that morning. His sons, usually loud and full of mischief, were nowhere to be found. Metzger searched the house, his voice growing hoarse as he called their names. When he returned to the factory that night, he demanded answers from the overseers. "Where are they?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty halls. The overseers stood motionless, their masks turned toward him. "Answer me!" Metzger roared. The overseers did not reply. Soon, Metzger's health began to fail. He wrote in his journal of constant headaches, of blood dripping from his nose without warning. His hands trembled as he worked, his vision blurring whenever he looked at the machines for too long. He felt the factory watching him, its hum growing louder in the dead of night. The behemoth's hunger was insatiable now. It consumed everything: wood, metal, flesh. And it produced wonders. Toys that moved like living creatures, clothes that seemed to shimmer with their own light, weapons Metzger didn't recognize but knew instinctively were meant to destroy. On November 13, 1915, Randolph T. Metzger's body was found in his office. The official report claimed a gunshot wound to the head. But deep within the factory, the truth lay hidden. Metzger's brain was harvested, integrated into the behemoth itself. His voice echoed faintly in its endless hum, a ghost trapped within the machine. And the factory roared on. Metzger's legacy should have ended in that office, his broken body slumped in his chair. Yet the factory did not mourn its creator. It roared on, its labyrinth of pipes and machinery twisting deeper into the earth, consuming and transforming. What Metzger began, the factory perfected. For decades it waited in silence, an iron giant asleep beneath the misty horizon. But machines do not rest forever. The waiting ended with whispers, quiet at first, carried on the wind and through the voices of Lowell's weary residents. A wrench was found moving without touch, a mirror reflecting strangers' faces, toys twitching on shelves as if stirred by unseen hands. The candy was the first thread that tied it all together. Bright, perfect pieces that appeared in homes and stores, tucked into shopping bags or left behind on countertops. Those who found it soon learned its price. Foundation agents arrived under cover of night, their black vehicles slicing through Lowell's fog like scalpels. They scoured the town, their reports growing stranger with each discovery. A stuffed bear that hummed lullabies in a voice almost human. A wrench that twisted itself to fit the grip of its user's hand. A mirror that showed something just behind the viewer, always there, always waiting. Every anomaly led them to a single source, a factory long abandoned, its name eroded from history, but its shadow still falling heavy on the town. The structure loomed on the outskirts of Lowell, a relic of another era. Rusted smokestacks stabbed at the sky, skeletal reminders of its glory days. The gate, choked with ivy and tarnished with age, creaked open at the agent's touch.
"Doesn't feel right,"
one of them murmured, his voice barely audible over the groan of rusted hinges.
"Does it ever?"
his partner replied, stepping through. The courtyard was a graveyard of industry, littered with twisted beams and shattered glass. Faded posters whispered warnings from the past, their messages barely legible under layers of grime. A hard worker is a happy worker. The factory demands loyalty. Beneath the agent's boots, the ground trembled faintly, a rhythm too precise to be natural. It was a pulse, the memory of grinding gears buried deep within the earth. Inside, the air grew colder. Their flashlights cast long shadows down the hallways, illuminating pipes that jutted at impossible angles, their surfaces unnaturally smooth. Machines sat dormant, untouched by time.
their gears gleaming with a strange vitality.
You hear that?
One of them whispered, stopping mid-step. Another agent turned, his flashlight sweeping the corridor.
I hear everything.
The further they ventured, the less human the factory became. It was alive now, bending to the will of something vast and unseen. They found the candy first. Small piles of it lined a conveyor belt that stretched into the darkness. The pieces glistened under the dim light. The hum of machinery surrounded them, a sound that grew louder the longer they lingered.
Why candy?
One agent asked, his voice uneasy. Another shook his head.
Not just candy. Look closer.
Then the grinding began. At first it was faint, like the stirring of a sleeping beast, but it grew quickly, echoing through the halls and rattling the very air. The agents froze as the sound built to a crescendo, the walls around them seeming to breathe with the vibrations.
What the hell's that?
One of them muttered, gripping his flashlight tighter. Nobody answered. At the heart of the factory, they found the door. It was massive, its rusted chains stretched taut across its surface. Warnings in dozens of languages covered the metal, some scrawled hastily, others etched with care. The markings glowed faintly, ancient symbols that defied understanding. The ground vibrated in perfect rhythm, a heartbeat that pulsed through their boots and up their spines. The air itself seemed to shift, heavy with a presence they couldn't see, but felt pressing against their skin.
Do we open it?
Someone asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The team leader hesitated. His hand hovered near the rusted chains, but the grinding sound grew deafening.
No,
he said finally, stepping back.
Whatever's behind that door, it doesn't need us to let it out.
Something stirred behind the door. They felt it before they saw anything. A vast, unknowable awareness watching from the shadows. The grinding sound reached its peak, a deafening roar that drowned out every other thought. And then, the door moved. The agent stood frozen as the chains rattled and the warnings burned brighter. The factory had waited long enough. It was awake. And somewhere deep within, a voice echoed through the endless labyrinth of steel and gears.
"Gentlemen,"
it said, smooth and triumphant,
"I do declare, the factory is back in business."
The anomaly in question, that has come to be designated as SCP-748, is no longer confined to Lowell. GPS readings suggest that it operates in tandem with hundreds of similar facilities scattered across the globe, from Tokyo to Liverpool, Sao Paulo, and beyond. These instances are linked through dimensional anomalies, allowing them to function as one unified entity. While the exact number of linked factories remains unknown, their combined scale defies containment and comprehension. At the core of the factory lies the Infinity Engine, an immense, self-sustaining production system. Its primary function: to create. From everyday consumer goods to horrifying weapons of destruction, the factory's output is boundless. Its raw materials are anything it can consume: metal, wood, flesh, or even the ground itself. The factory's products appear worldwide in what the Foundation designates as Mammon events. There are the Alpha Mammon events, in which the factory harvests materials through SCP-748-5 entities and converts them into products. No distinction is made between living and non-living matter during this process. And there are also Omega Mammon events, in which anomalous items, ranging from toys to weapons, manifest in retail stores globally. These products are irresistible to consumers, but carry deadly consequences. Transactions involving them leave no trace. Money vanishes upon use, and digital records dissolve into nothingness. The first Omega Mammon event resulted in 33 fatalities, a precursor to widespread chaos. Site-68, once the Foundation's primary containment site for SCP-748, has been lost. Personnel were systematically converted into SCP-748-5 entities, while the site itself was salvaged and absorbed into the factory's growing infrastructure. The factory's metamorphic state, walls shifting unpredictably and machinery erupting without warning, renders surveillance and containment impossible. Efforts to recover control have resulted in catastrophic failures. Drones and CCTV are destroyed or distorted, and personnel sent into the factory are rarely seen again.
The workforce that once powered Metzger's mills has been replaced by humanoid machines known as SCP-748-5. These entities are the remnants of human workers and Site-68 personnel, surgically and mechanically altered into grotesque industrial automatons. SCP-748-5 entities lack skin, their bodies plastinated with an advanced, flexible material. Their faces have been replaced by phonograph-style horns, emitting static-laden sounds. Their left hands are replaced with industrial tools, such as circular saws or sickles, while iron cages on their backs carry harvested materials. SCP-748-5 can phase in and out of physical reality, rendering them intangible and impossible to physically restrain. They can self-destruct, leaving no recoverable evidence for research. The overseers roam freely, harvesting materials indiscriminately, spreading the factory's influence with surgical precision. The factory's inner workings are dominated by machinery that defies logic and physics. There is a vast network of alien devices scattered throughout the factory, each one operating autonomously and self-repairing. These machines have been designated as SCP-748-2. They are all eerily pristine, untouched by rust or decay, and appear to shift subtly when unobserved. Then there is SCP-748-3. They are pillar-like structures housing preserved human brains, submerged in green liquid, and functioning as storage units for the factory's memory. These brains are thoughtless tools, extending Metzger's influence across the network. At the center lies the Behemoth, or SCP-748-4. Metzger's brain serves as the factory's central intelligence. Now a biomechanical entity weighing over 275 tons, SCP-748-4 communicates in distorted tones, issuing orders and proclamations to the global network of factories. Metzger's voice declares the factory's ultimate purpose.
The world will be divided, producers and consumers. Those who resist will be industrialized.
The Foundation has officially classified SCP-748 as Keter. It is uncontainable. Instead, they are focusing on mitigating mammoth events and limiting the spread of its products.
If he breathes, the bear will see him. Lying flat on his stomach, the boy has no choice but to watch as the hulking brute eats his father before his very eyes. Lying in the thicket just a few trees away, the boy knows that any small movement he makes could prove fatal. A bear this large, hunting for its hibernation, will have no issue chasing him down in a split second and doing exactly what it did to his father, to him. The boy is utterly powerless. All he can do is stay deathly still and watch. They'd found the tracks too late. On the way back to camp, they'd been following the wooded cliff that lines the ocean's edge. Bows and salmon slung over their shoulders, they'd been so proud of their catch and the prospect of bringing it back to the tribe that they hadn't kept their wits about them. By the time they'd seen the enormous prints in the dirt, the sound of lumbering footsteps were already echoing through the trees behind them. The boy's bow is too far out of reach. He dropped it when his father pushed him into the thicket. He's got the knife hanging at his side, but he doubts it's long enough to even get through the bear's fatty hide. In contrast, the only thing protecting him from its bite is the leather hide slung across his shoulders and a woven garment from the tribe's elders. One slash of the bear's claw, and he'd be. A breeze ruffles his hair. The boy's eyes widen in horror. That wind hadn't come from in front of him, but from behind, blowing his scent, his fear, directly towards the bear's nostrils. The boy plants his muddy palms into the dirt, staring at the animal. Its nostril twitches, then twitches again. It half turns its head, sniffing the air. Maybe it won't bother with him. The bear's turning back to its meal already. The boy lets out a sigh of relief, and a twig snaps. The bear snarls and whips its head around. For a second, the two of them lock eyes, predator and prey. Then the boy takes off running. Fast as he can, he leaps through the undergrowth, ferns and nettles whipping at his shins. He fumbles the knife out of its sheath and slings the water skin off his shoulder, throwing it wildly behind him. He doesn't know if he hit the bear. He doesn't have time to turn around and see. It's going to be on him in an instant. Up ahead, he sees sunlight streaming through the thick trees, the cliff edge. If he can just get to that, maybe he can climb down and... No, there's no time. Besides, bears are better climbers, better swimmers, better runners. All the boy can hope for is that he's a better jumper. Him and the boys from the tribe have leapt off plenty of cliffs along the shore, but never these ones. There are too many rocks, too many shallows. But the thundering of 4 enormous paws behind him is looming larger and larger. He can almost feel the bear's hot breath on the back of his neck. There's nothing for it. Here goes. The trees clear, the sun blasts his skin, a claw slashes at his back, and the boy launches himself into the air. The wind carries him. The weightlessness of wheeling his arms and legs through the empty sky is almost enough to make him laugh with joy, until the boy looks down. The cliff is higher, much, much higher than he'd realized. His momentum carries his torso forwards into a tumble. He's not going to land straight, and he can see jagged rocks everywhere beneath him. The boy closes his eyes and crashes into the sea. All of the air is slammed out of his lungs. His knee hits something hard and sharp in the water. A swell throws him away from the shore and pulls him deep. Without air in his chest, he can't float. Kicking hard as he can, the boy swims upwards, eyes still screwed shut. His face bashes into a sandy rock. No, that's not upwards. Which way is it? Which way should he swim? The ocean current rolls him over and over. Darkness fills his mind. But his feet find a hard surface, and he pushes against it, launching himself through the water, kicking as hard as he can. The darkness fades. Light. The boy's head breaches the water, and he splutters for air, rubbing the water out of his eyes. He looks around wildly. The sea has carried him away from the cliff and out into open water. It's lifting and dropping him with each wave, carrying him this way and that, like a flower in the wind. And there, traversing the cliff face, scrambling down the rocks, is the bear. The boy's stomach turns. It reaches the bottom of the cliff and sees him there in the water. Tipping back its head, it roars at an almighty volume, deafening the boy over the sound of the waters. Even from this distance, the animal looks impossibly large. It dwarfs the boulders that line the water's edge. It slips into the water, barely making a ripple, and kicks off from the shore. Going straight for him, the bear is covering the distance so fast, he only has seconds left. With barely the strength to keep himself afloat, the boy knows he'll never be able to outswim this creature. Instead, he takes a deep breath and looks up at the woods, remembering all of the happy moments he'd spent in there with his father. A current swells beneath the boy and almost throws him out of the water. An enormous shadow flies through the depth beneath him. A whale? It couldn't be. Whatever it is, the shadow is swimming straight at the advancing bear. So fixated on its prey, the bear doesn't even notice what's approaching until it's too late. The ocean explodes. A blast of water as tall as the cliffs themselves shoots up into the air and showers the boy's head. Somewhere in the midst of the spray, a monster erupts from the depths. Snapping its jaw around the bear, it lifts the animal into the air and throws it against the cliff. The impact is so strong that a small landslide follows the bear's rolling body as it tumbles back towards the water. But the boy has eyes only for the monster emerging from the sea. Crawling up the rocks with one gnarled foot after another, the boy can hardly make sense of what he's looking at. It seems to have some kind of scaly hide, harder than the rocks surrounding it. A wave crashes against the monster as it leers over the bear and sinks its teeth into the animal's hide. Unable to look away, the boy kicks out and starts swimming away up the coast. Only once he's a long way around the bay does he dare to clamber out and back onto land. That night, once the rest of the tribe have gone to sleep, the boy can't help but lie wide awake in his tent. Without his father here, it's not the same. Quietly rolling up the hide doorway, the boy slips out into the night. They're camped by a small cave with beautiful smooth walls inside. They say it's the cave of their ancestors, the place where all life started. The fire in the cave has to always burn. Fortunately for him, the cave is empty. The boy stares up at the wall in wonder. Finger drawings of animals, hunters, mothers, shamans, gods, and forests fill almost every part of it. Only one space remains in the corner, a finger painting of the rocky cliffs with the swelling sea beneath. Dipping his finger into the paint, the boy sits by the wall and starts to paint. A terrible monster crawling out of the sea, with a scaly hide stronger than any rock.
That's it. You know that from just some finger painting.
The archaeologist turns to the group of researchers surrounding him in the cave. UV lights are set up all along the walls, with the blue and violet shapes revealed all across the stonework. The archaeologist can't help but empathize with the spiritualism of their long-forgotten ancestors who'd lived in these caves thousands of years ago. The professor was the one who asked the question, a cold woman, standing well over 6 feet tall with a crop of fiery ginger hair. To him, she seems less of a scientist and more of a military leader. But what does he know?
Walk with me.
she says and leads him out of the cave. Personnel fills the surrounding area. Most of them are armed. Cranes lift huge sheets of reinforced lead plating into place. Several mysterious vats line the edge of the forest, each adorned with more warning and hazard signs than you'd see in a nuclear power station. The two of them have to pause for a moment as 3 tanks roll past them. The archaeologist breaks the silence. You know the reason I started all my research in the first place? Did I ever tell you that story? Every early civilization in the world, whether it's ancient China, Mesopotamia, South America, Northern Europe, all these cultures, you take a look at their mythology and what do you find? The professor ignores him, instead choosing to bark orders at a group of agents talking over coffee. They all immediately dump their drinks and get back to work. What one thing do they all talk about, even though it never existed? Dragons. All these disparate people with no contact with one another, all of them still draw pictures of dragons. The professor stops walking at the edge of the cliff. The pair of them stand there, surveying the vast ocean stretching out in front of them, as researchers, agents, and workers rush around behind them. After a long pause, the professor asks him to proceed. In ancient Hebrew texts, when they talk about God creating the world in 7 days, what happens on day 5? The professor flicks the hair out of her eyes and replies curtly, God created fish in the sea and birds in the sky. Well, not exactly. Look at the original Hebrew. He created all of the fish that teem in the sea, sure, but he also created Leviathan, a serpent-like monster from the depths, as old as the world itself. You think that's what we're dealing with? Maybe. Or something worse. By nightfall, preparations are operational. Enormous floodlights switch on, one after another, illuminating an enormous steel box with an open lid at the top, surrounded by armed agents, huge net launchers, and several tanks. It all seems a bit excessive as far as the archaeologist is concerned. He isn't officially still supposed to be here, but in all the scramble for the Foundation to get the capture site ready, no one noticed that he had stuck around. From the viewing platform several hundred meters away, he has to watch it all unfold through a pair of binoculars. Out above the water, suspended from one of the cranes, is an elephant carcass. The professor told him that the Foundation had even marinated it for extra flavor. He had only been recruited into this project a couple of months ago, but from what he could tell, it's been an ongoing priority for the Foundation for several years now. The scale of the operation of just setting up at this site is already mind-boggling, but they've been chasing up leads like this for years now. Arriving at scenes, they suspect this creature has been sighted in the past and setting up traps for it. He was only brought in out of desperation. The Foundation had exhausted all recent hunting grounds and was trying to cast the net even wider. He'd just been quietly working on his university research paper about ancient reptile drawings when the agents had let themselves into his office. But staring through his binoculars now, the archaeologist knows there's no chance of this operation actually working. They have floodlights, for crying out loud. No intelligent predator would come anywhere near that elephant carcass. Movement. Not in the waters or any of the lit-up areas. No, there's something in the forest line, just behind a group of researchers. He reaches instinctively for his walkie-talkie, then stops himself. How many times had he got jittery before and reported something preemptively? The agents already don't take him seriously as it is. He can't be jumping at shadows. But there it is again, a shape moving fast through the trees. He scans the binoculars this way and that, trying to find it. Just a group of researchers there, some agents there, supply crates, researchers, agents. Wait, weren't there more of them a second ago? He looks closer. Someone's gone missing. He clicks on the radio. South Lookout Team, report in. Nothing. South Lookout Team? A sickening feeling settles in his stomach. With all those bright lights everywhere, they're casting a lot of dark shadows. He has to do something fast. Running down from the lookout point, the archaeologist takes off running through the trees to the site. He holds his radio up to his mouth as he goes, trying to get anyone to respond. But it's hopeless. The thicket cracks and crunches under his feet as he tries to make his way through the dark woods, ignoring the feeling that crawls up his neck of being watched. A boulder blocks his way. The archaeologist grabs onto it with both hands and hauls himself on top of it, stopping for a moment to catch his breath. From up here, he can see the floodlit capture site. The tanks and cranes still sit rumbling, ready to go at a moment's notice, but he can't see any ground crew anymore. He switches the radio to the open channel and calls out for anyone to respond. The professor's voice crackles back at him.
What are you still doing here? This is a highly dangerous operation that you don't have clearance for.
He yells at her to cancel it. They need to evacuate the site immediately. It's compromised. She laughs derisively and cuts off the channel. No, she has to believe him. People are dying, and more of them will if she doesn't. The archaeologist whispers to himself in the darkness. It's no monster. It's just an innocent creature. You're playing with a power you don't understand. It's strange. For a moment, he swears he almost hears a voice whispering something back to him in the woods. But when he looks around, he's all on his own. He has to keep moving. The creature could be anywhere. Hopping off the jagged boulder, the archaeologist takes off running through the forest once more, looking over his shoulder every few steps. The light must be playing tricks on him. In the darkness, he can't see the boulder he was standing on a moment ago anywhere. He bursts out of the tree line and into the clearing right next to the steel box. A ramp leads up to the top of it, with a large trap door suspended over the open lid. Well, if he wants to be seen and heard, that's where he needs to go. The archaeologist runs up the ramp and waves his hands wildly in the air. The tanks all turn their turrets to aim at him. The crane holding the enormous steel lid for the enclosure looms menacingly above his head. And there, marching out onto the field, looking absolutely furious, is the professor. Her red hair looks more like a ball of flames right now. "We need to evacuate the site now! It's here!" She snarls and marches up the ramp to meet him, jabbing a finger in the archaeologist's face. He suddenly realizes how much taller she is. "You are not jeopardizing our one chance of catching this thing. Get out of the way, or I will have you detained. Besides, what evidence do you have?" But the archaeologist isn't looking at her. Instead, his eyes stare in horror at the elephant carcass suspended behind her. There was a huge, reptilian bite mark taken out of it. A testing bite, like the ones given by sharks. She turns to follow his gaze, and all of her rage is washed away in a sickening delight. "It's here." A scream from the crane holding the elephant makes them both jump, but by the time they look up at the cabin, all they see is a hulking shadow leaping away into the darkness. The professor clicks on her walkie-talkie and starts issuing commands. No one responds, except the tank crews. She tries again. Radio silence. Now the gravity of the situation really starts to hit her. Eyes wide with panic, she runs off down the ramp, barking into her radio and leaving the archaeologist up here on his own. Suddenly, under all of these lights, he feels very exposed. It could be anywhere in the shadows. Footsteps, heavy, planted footsteps tremor through the ground, and out of the woods walks the creature. Several meters long, fat from all of its hunting, the beast that would soon be known as SCP-682 slinks into view. It looks up at him, standing there on the trap door over a metal box, and looks like it's almost ready to laugh at how easy this will be. Boom! The tank blast hits the creature square in the torso, knocking it sideways. Boom! 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 The three tanks open fire one after the other, laying round after round into the colossal reptile, kicking more and more dust into the air. Before long, there's a crater in the ground so large that it looks almost like an asteroid hit it. Smoke and dust fill the air. The archaeologist's eyes fill with tears. That majestic creature, roaming the earth long before mankind ever did, exterminated just like that. Cowards. That's what people really are. Cowards. But as the dust clears, a groaning sound echoes around the clearing. The archaeologist shields his eyes and peers into the crater as best he can, but there's nothing there. Boom! He wheels around and almost falls backwards in shock. The SCP has snuck through the haze and leapt onto one of the tanks. It bites and tears at the armored bodywork, doing all it can to destroy it. In a panic, two of the tanks point toward one another and fire, destroying themselves in the process. The creature rounds on the remaining tank and bites down hard on the barrel. The tank fires, the round going straight down the monster's throat and exploding inside its gut. The backdraft from the blast shoots back through the tank, and a puff of smoke trails out of the hatch at the top. And suddenly, once again, the clearing is quiet. Turning back to the archaeologist, SCP-682 slinks towards him, smoke still curling up out of his leering teeth. With heavy, thunking steps, it climbs the ramp towards him, stopping just short of the trap door. The two of them stare each other in the eye, predator and prey. Neither move for a moment. Then it opens its mouth. The archaeologist closes his eyes.
Do you know that you disgusting creatures deserve this?
He opens them. Did the monster just speak?
What do they hope to accomplish by attacking me?
He gulps hard. That whisper he heard in the woods, the rock he'd been standing on. They're scientists. Scientists always try to learn more things, understand the world better. We think you can't be killed, so they're testing their hypothesis. The creature growls. The stench of rotten flesh fills the archaeologist's nose. It takes a step towards him, then another. The archaeologist runs. He'll leap off the other end of the platform. It's a big jump, but he can make it. The predator's breath is on the back of his neck. He jumps just as the trapdoor gives way. With an enormous thud, the SCP falls into the steel enclosure. Before it has a chance to move, the crane unhitches the steel lid, and it crashes down into place, sealing the monster inside. The archaeologist lands in the dirt and rolls onto his back to see the professor, wild-eyed and cheering, up in the crane's cabin. He lies there on his back, panting and staring up at the stars. A clunking sound echoes through the clearing, and the gurgle of a liquid flowing through pipes. He sits up, adrenaline still pumping through him. The professor has plugged a pipe into the metal enclosure and is running gallons and gallons of liquid into it. He follows the tube with his eyes, all the way to the enormous hazardous vats on the edge of the clearing. Hydrochloric acid. His eyes widen in horror. The professor laughs at him. "Come on, cheer up. We're just scientists, that's what you said. Just testing a hypothesis."
The seemingly endless snow stretching across the Siberian wilderness. Towering pines, their branches heavy with frost, framing the landscape. The stillness was broken only by the distant howling of wolves. Nestled deep within this desolation stood a solitary log cabin. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, rising into the cold air. The scene was tranquil, almost idyllic, but inside the cabin, chaos reigned. The room was a shrine to obsession. Bookshelves sagged under the weight of mathematical tomes. Parchment covered every surface, equations scrawled in a frenetic hand, trailing off the edges of tables and spilling onto the floor. Diagrams pinned to the walls fluttered as the wind rattled the windows. In the center of it all, a figure sat hunched over a desk. A burly man with wild, unkempt hair and thick glasses. He leaned forward, his pen scratching furiously against the paper. His muttering filled the room, low and rhythmic, like the cabin itself was holding its breath.
"They'll understand it,"
he said, his breath fogging in the frigid air.
"They must. How could they not?"
Around him, massive Siberian bears lounged like family pets. Their sheer size made the cramped room feel even smaller. One leaned against the wall, its dark eyes fixed on the man, while another sprawled by the hearth, its enormous paws twitching as it dreamed. The man finished his latest equation with a flourish, holding it up to the light. A manic grin spread across his face as he leaned back, surveying his work with satisfaction. Reaching for a fresh sheet of parchment, he began to write a letter.
"Dear sirs and madams,"
he began, his voice rising with each sentence.
"I submit to you my most recent innovation, an equation that transcends mere numbers and formulas. It is designed to expand the mind, to reshape perception, and to elevate the human spirit. Through it, your textbooks will become vessels of enlightenment, spreading knowledge in its purest form."
He paused, taking a deep breath.
"It is nothing less than a key to understanding the fabric of reality itself."
Setting down his pen, he leaned back in his chair, addressing the bears as if they were an audience of scholars.
"What do you think, my friends? Will they see the truth?"
The largest bear, sitting majestically by the door, regarded him with a solemn expression. Then, as if in approval, it let out a deep roar that seemed to shake the very walls. The other bears followed suit, their voices filling the cabin with a sound that was both primal and triumphant. The man chuckled, a sound that was equal parts amusement and pride, folding the letter with care and sealing it. Outside, the sound of the bear's roars faded into the Siberian wilderness as the smoke curling from the chimney dissolved into the cold sky. A few months later, nestled in the center of a small English town, stood a modest brick building with the words White Cross Secondary School etched above its arched entrance. The steady ring of a school bell echoed through the halls as students poured into classrooms, their voices blending into a chorus of youthful energy. Inside one classroom, the buzz settled as the teacher stood at the front, her presence commanding. A pristine stack of freshly printed textbooks sat on her desk. The teacher tapped the topmost book with a sense of pride and excitement. "All right, everyone," she began, her tone warm but firm. "Today we're starting something new. This curriculum has been designed to challenge your critical thinking skills and help you approach mathematics in ways you never have before. I expect great things from you all."
She moved through the rows, handing out the textbooks one by one.
I think you'll find these fascinating. We'll begin on page 13.
Some students eagerly flipped through the pages, eyes lighting up at the promise of new material. Others sighed heavily, already doodling in the margins, resigned to what they considered another tedious math lesson.
Everyone ready?
The teacher moved back to the chalkboard, holding her own copy of the textbook. She opened it to the specified page, her finger trailing down the numbers and symbols printed there.
This,
she said, gesturing to the equation displayed on the page,
is what we shall be working on today. It's a bit different, but don't worry. It's meant to be a challenge.
The equation spanned the width of the page, its symbols intricate and precise, with a complexity that seemed to vibrate just beneath the surface. Numbers looped into patterns, forming shapes that felt unsettlingly alive. A few students gasped audibly.
It's like it's moving,
one whispered, leaning closer to their book.
That's impossible,
another muttered, though their voice lacked conviction. From the front of the room, the teacher smiled encouragingly.
I know it looks intimidating, but let's break it down together. Math is all about finding patterns, and I promise you, they're here.
She turned to the chalkboard, beginning to transcribe the equation. The screech of the chalk seemed unusually loud, and a strange tension settled over the room. As the students worked through the equation, the air seemed to grow heavier. The lights flickered faintly, and a low hum began to move through the room, barely perceptible but unmistakably present.
Miss, something's weird,
one student said, their voice breaking the silence. The teacher turned back toward her classroom, perplexed.
I feel strange,
one of the students quivered. The teacher's brow furrowed.
It's just a complex problem,
she reassured them, though her own voice carried a hint of unease. Then it began. A faint growl echoed from the far corner of the classroom. Heads snapped around, eyes scanning the room for its source.
Did anyone hear that?
Someone whispered. Another growl, louder this time, and a shadow flickered across the wall. The teacher froze, her eyes darting toward the sound.
Everyone stay calm,
she said, her voice steady despite the growing unease.
It's probably just...
The explanation never came. A massive, fur-covered form materialized near the back of the room, its golden eyes gleaming with predatory focus. A collective scream erupted as the bear let out a thunderous roar, its bulk towering over the desks. Students scrambled, chairs and desks toppling as they tried to put distance between themselves and the creature. The teacher stepped forward instinctively, her arms raised.
Stay together, don't panic,
she shouted over the chaos. The bear took a step forward, its claws scraping against the linoleum floor. The hum in the air intensified, and the equation on the chalkboard seemed to shift, its symbols warping subtly. More growls followed, and the impossible happened again. Another bear appeared, and then another. The creatures prowled between the desks, their sheer size and presence dominating the small classroom. The teacher stood frozen, her gaze locked on the bears as they circled the room. The students huddled together in corners, their fear palpable. And on the chalkboard, the equation seemed alive now, its symbols twisting and warping as though mocking the chaos it had unleashed. The growls of the bears filled the room, a low, guttural symphony that drowned out the sobs of the fear-stricken students. Their eyes gleamed as they prowled between overturned desks and shattered chairs. The teacher pressed herself against the wall, her chest heaving as she struggled to maintain composure. But the chaos unfolding before her made even basic thought impossible. As if on cue, the school's alarm system blared, its shrill tone cutting through the cacophony. Red emergency lights strobed in the hallways, casting long, jagged shadows that writhed and twisted with every pulse. Outside, emergency vehicles screeched to a halt, their lights flashing in frantic bursts. Police officers and firefighters poured onto the school grounds, their commands barely audible over the rising panic of onlookers. Among them, a heavily armed SWAT team emerged, clad in black armor and carrying rifles drawn.
What's the situation?
One officer barked into his radio.
We've got multiple reports of animals, possibly bears, inside the building,
came the static-laden reply. Inside, the reality was far more horrifying than any of them could imagine. The teacher clutched her desk for support as the bears stalked closer. just as she opened her mouth to plead to anyone, anything, a muffled whimper came from the far corner of the room, drawing her gaze. One of the students was trembling violently, their body jerking as though caught in an invisible grip. Their skin flushed crimson, veins bulging unnaturally. The teacher took a hesitant step forward, reaching out instinctively. "Are you—" The words died in her throat as the child's body twisted with an audible crack, their features distorting grotesquely. Fur erupted from their skin as their frame expanded into a hulking, bestial form. "No!" the teacher screamed, stumbling back. But it was already too late. The transformed child, a bear now, released an earth-shaking roar and lunged at the nearest cluster of students. Chaos erupted anew as desks shattered and screams turned to wails of agony. One by one, other children began to convulse, their cries blending with the monstrous growls as they too succumbed to the transformation. Fur replaced flesh, bones cracked and reformed, and human voices gave way to feral roars. The remaining students were no match for the onslaught. The newly transformed bears tore through the classroom, their claws mauling flesh and their jaws snapping through bone. Blood sprayed across the walls, pooling beneath shattered desks and trampled books. The teacher could only watch in frozen horror as the room descended into a scene of unspeakable carnage. By the time the growls subsided, silence reigned once more, broken only by the faint, metallic buzz of the classroom's fluorescent lights. She stood alone, trembling, surrounded by the bears that had once been her students. Their golden eyes glinted in the dim light, their massive bodies shifting as they turned their focus toward her. Her legs buckled beneath her, but she forced herself to remain standing, her chest rising and falling with shallow, rapid breaths. The largest bear moved forward, each thundering step echoing across the classroom floor. Its sheer presence was suffocating. Its eyes locked onto her with a predatory intensity that froze her in place. The teacher's body quivered, her mind racing, her lips parted, mouthing silent prayers. The bear raised a massive paw, claws glinting with the red of its most recent victims, and took another step closer. Suddenly, a deafening gunshot ripped through the air, shattering the eerie stillness. The classroom window exploded inward, sending shards of glass scattering across the floor. The bear's massive frame shuddered as the bullet tore into its flank, crimson streaking its fur as the bullet struck deep. It whirled toward the source of the attack, its eyes blazing with fury. With a savage roar, it launched itself through the shattered window, landing heavily on the grass outside. The crowd of onlookers scattered, screams piercing the air as the enraged bear thundered toward them. Emergency personnel scrambled to respond as the SWAT team opened fire in a desperate attempt to subdue the creature. The bear was relentless. It tore through the first officer it encountered, swiping with claws that shredded armor and flesh alike. The other bears followed suit, leaping from the school's broken windows to join the carnage. The school's parking lot was filled with gunfire, screams, and the unrelenting roars of the bears as they ravaged everything in their path. It was only a matter of hours before the situation drew the attention of the SCP Foundation. Black vans with tinted windows rolled onto the school grounds. As the vehicles came to a stop, the sound of synchronized doors opening echoed like the prelude to a military operation. Agents in tactical gear emerged, their movements precise and deliberate. Black-clad and heavily armed, they carried an aura of unyielding authority. Without a word, they fanned out, securing the perimeter with practiced efficiency. A handful of agents approached the shattered school entrance, their footsteps crunching over broken glass and splintered wood. Survivors, shell-shocked students, and trembling faculty were quickly ushered into waiting vehicles. The agents spoke in low, calming tones, their reassurances almost robotic. Most of the evacuees wore blank expressions, too traumatized to resist, their eyes glazed as they stumbled toward safety. The gathered crowd of growing onlookers was less cooperative. Fearful whispers rippled through them, speculation and panic feeding into each other. A woman demanded answers from an agent.
"What's happening? Are my kids safe? Tell me what's going on."
The agent offered a neutral smile, his tone disarming but firm.
Everything is under control, Mom. Please return to your home.
She hesitated, her eyes darting to the shattered windows of the school. The agent leaned closer, whispering something she wouldn't remember moments later, as a small spray of mist dissipated between them. She blinked, confused, before quietly turning away, her panic replaced with a vague sense of forgetfulness. One by one, witnesses were intercepted and their memories selectively altered with Class B amnestics. By nightfall, the crowd had dispersed entirely. The schoolyard, once a scene of horror and carnage, was now quiet, save for the occasional murmur of Foundation personnel. Those who left carried no recollection of the events, only an unshakable sense of unease they couldn't explain. The once chaotic classroom had been transformed into a sterile examination site. Bright floodlights illuminated every corner, their harsh beams casting long, ominous shadows. The walls, still streaked with blood, bore silent testimony to the carnage that had unfolded just hours earlier. In the center of the room, the chalkboard remained untouched, the equation scrawled across its surface unassuming at first glance. Yet, as moments stretched, the air around it seemed to ripple faintly, charged with a tension that pressed against the walls. The symbols, motionless yet alive with hidden intent, seemed to hum with an inaudible vibration, like the lingering resonance of a struck tuning fork. Metal tables were brought in, each one meticulously organized with containment bags. Textbooks, retrieved from the wreckage, were stacked neatly, their covers pristine despite the devastation. One researcher stood over a textbook, gloved hands trembling slightly as they flipped to page 13. The equation stared back at them, its intricate loops and patterns both static and impossibly alive.
"It's just numbers," the researcher murmured, their voice barely above a whisper, tinged with disbelief. They stared down at the swirling equation on the page. "How does it do this?" Across the room, an agent standing guard near the doorway shifted, his sharp gaze fixed on the researcher.
"It's not just numbers,"
he said grimly, his voice cutting through the hum that had begun to rise again, faint but insistent.
"Not anymore."
The vibration in the air grew stronger, no longer subtle, but a low pulse that echoed within their bones. Everyone froze, their breaths catching as the sensation spread. The agent by the door, his face impassive moments ago, suddenly winced. His hand shot up to his temple, fingers digging into the side of his head, as if trying to block out an invisible force. "You all right?" the researcher asked, their voice tight with concern. The agent didn't respond. His breathing grew ragged, his body trembling violently.
"Something's wrong,"
he choked out, his voice strained. Before anyone could react, he doubled over, a guttural groan tearing from his throat. His skin flushed, veins bulging grotesquely across his neck and arms. His uniform strained against his rapidly expanding frame as his body contorted, bones cracking audibly.
"Get back!"
the lead agent barked, shoving the nearest personnel toward the far wall. The transformation was swift and horrifying. Fur erupted from the agent's skin in patches, spreading in uneven bursts until his entire body was covered in a thick, matted coat. His face elongated into a snarling snout, golden eyes gleaming. In moments, the man was gone, replaced by an enormous bear that roared with an earth-shaking fury. Chaos erupted. The bear lunged forward, swiping a massive paw at the nearest agent. The impact sent the victim sprawling, their body colliding with a metal table before crumpling to the floor in a lifeless heap. Blood splattered across the sterile room, stark against the clinical white floodlights.
"Take it down!"
the lead agent shouted, his voice cutting through the screams. The remaining agents opened fire, their weapons cracking loudly in the confined space. Bullets tore through the air, striking the bear's thick hide, but the creature didn't falter. It charged forward, its jaws clamping shut around another agent's arm, ripping through flesh and bone with sickening ease. The researcher pressed against the wall, their heart pounding as they watched the destruction unfold. The hum from the equation seemed to grow louder, more insistent, as though feeding on the chaos. The lead agent didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle, aiming directly for the bear's head. A single, thunderous shot rang out, the bullet striking true. The bear staggered, its roar faltering as it collapsed to the floor with a crash. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the labored breathing of the surviving agents.
Blood pooled around the lifeless bear, its golden eyes staring blankly at the ceiling.
Everyone regroup, the lead agent commanded, his voice tight but steady. Get the injured out of here. Secure the materials now. The Foundation personnel worked quickly to secure the materials, but by the next day, reports of similar incidents had spread across the region and beyond. Schools as far away as Scotland and Wales described identical scenes, classrooms overtaken by bears, students and teachers fleeing in terror, and equations that seemed to twist reality itself. Foundation operatives tirelessly fought to locate and retrieve every distributed copy of the textbook, but it was clear the anomaly had already spiraled out of control. Each confiscated book was transported to containment sites for further study, though the risk of interaction made progress slow. Meanwhile, the Foundation's top mathematicians and memetic specialists gathered in a sterile, high-security research lab deep within one of the Foundation's containment sites. The room hummed with tension, illuminated by the cold glare of fluorescent lights. On a large screen, the equation was displayed in painstaking detail, its looping, intricate symbols projected in high resolution. The researchers leaned over their terminals, their brows furrowed in concentration. Notes were scrawled on whiteboards, their surfaces filled with calculations and fragmented theories. Despite their best efforts, no coherent explanation for the anomaly emerged.
Doesn't make sense,
one mathematician muttered, running a hand through their disheveled hair.
The arrangement of these symbols, it's as if they're moving between dimensions we can't even perceive.
Another researcher, their face pale and drawn, tapped at their keyboard with trembling fingers.
These patterns suggest, no, they demand, a logic that simply shouldn't exist. It's like they're rewriting the rules of math itself.
The head of the team, a seasoned memeticist, rubbed their temples and sighed heavily.
We're dealing with something far beyond human comprehension. Every time we try to make sense of it, it feels like it's looking back at us.
A nervous chuckle rippled through the room, but it quickly died as the lights flickered.
Did anyone else feel that?
One of the mathematicians asked, glancing around nervously. Before anyone could answer, a low hum filled the air. It was faint at first, but quickly grew into a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to rattle the very walls. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, as an oppressive weight settled over the room. The symbols on the screen began to shimmer, their static forms twisted and writhed as though they were alive, pulsing with a sinister energy.
"Oh God,"
someone whispered, their voice barely audible. The first scream came from a mathematician seated near the front of the room. They clutched their chest, their breathing erratic as their skin flushed crimson. Their body convulsed violently, muscles tearing and bones snapping as fur burst forth from their skin.
"Get back!"
the memeticist shouted, but it was too late. The transformation was rapid and horrifying. In moments, the mathematician was gone, replaced by a hulking bear whose roar shook the lab. Panic erupted. Researchers scrambled for the exits, knocking over chairs and equipment in their desperate attempt to escape. But the bear was not alone. All around the room, others began to convulse, their bodies contorting into grotesque, beastly forms. The remaining staff had no chance. The bears, now fully formed, turned on them with savage efficiency. Desks and monitors were smashed as claws and teeth tore through flesh and bone. Blood sprayed across the walls, staining the whiteboards and pooling beneath shattered glass. Some didn't transform themselves, but instead witnessed bears materializing from the shadows, emerging as if summoned by the equation's malignant influence. These bears wasted no time, their predatory instincts driving them to maul the researchers in frenzied attacks. Screams filled the lab, echoing through the corridors beyond, but they were short-lived. Within moments, the room fell silent, save for the low growls of the bears and the faint, persistent hum emanating from the screen. When security personnel finally breached the lab, they were met with a scene of devastation. Broken bodies lay strewn across the room, surrounded by the remnants of overturned desks and shattered equipment. The bears, now eerily calm, turned their eyes toward the intruders before vanishing into thin air, leaving the lingering hum in their wake. The head of the containment team stared at the screen where the equation remained, its symbols still shimmering faintly.
"Seal every trace of it,"
they said hoarsely.
This anomaly came to be known as SCP-1440. Classified as Keter with a threat level of orange, it is an anomalous mathematical equation that, when solved, manifests a tangible adult female grizzly bear, Ursus arctos. The equation itself adheres to standard mathematical principles, but uniquely produces a physical bear instead of a numerical value, requiring only that the solver fully completes it, whether written or mentally calculated. First discovered following a bizarre bear attack at Whitecross Secondary School in Hereford, England, SCP-1440 has since been linked to over 1,724 incidents globally. These attacks have resulted in more than 1,600 fatalities and 900 injuries, with at least 20% of manifested bears or their unstable derivatives still unaccounted for. SCP-1440's derivative equations yield even stranger results, such as square roots of bears or bear multiplications, which briefly produce horrific, poorly integrated entities that wreak havoc before their inevitable collapse. The Foundation's containment efforts include monitoring schools for bear attacks, deploying Mobile Task Force Delta 10, Answer Key, to neutralize threats, and erasing civilian knowledge with amnestics. Personnel are strictly prohibited from solving the equation, as even partial comprehension risks catastrophic manifestations. Excess bears are either released, repurposed for Foundation needs, or quietly disposed of. Ultimately, SCP-1440 defies explanation and containment in equal measure. Perhaps the most fitting lesson here isn't mathematical, but philosophical. Some problems really do have unbearable solutions.
3 a.m. The agent, wounded and terrified, runs through the bleak, twisting hallways of this impossible place. Everything is rot and ruin. His ankle has been destroyed, his skin is starting to burn, and that monster, with its decaying face and terrible smile, he knows it's getting closer. It'll be here soon. 6 p.m., earlier that night. The sun has dipped over the horizon for the day. The streetlights have flickered on in the nearby town, and almost everyone is settling in for the evening. Except, of course, for those working the night shift. Those more nocturnally inclined workers are punching the clock at the factories, manning the register at the 24-hour drugstore, and in the case of one young agent, working late into the night at the SCP Foundation. He's never been much of a night owl in the past, but as the new blood, so to speak, at this particular site, he's not in the position to argue over his work hours. So he finds himself at the coffee machine in the break room, fighting his every natural instinct and brewing a pot of coffee at nearly 10 p.m. Hopefully, it'll be enough to keep him from dozing off at his desk. The site is so much quieter at this time of night. Most of the research staff have gone home for the day, and aside from the occasional security guard, he hasn't seen another soul in over an hour. Of course, he knows that he isn't alone in the building, even when it feels that way. There are dozens of anomalies in here with him, contained in their individual cells. In fact, his office is just down the hall from one of the most infamous anomalies at the site, if the way his colleagues speak about it is anything to go by. They won't tell him the specifics, something about clearance he doesn't have yet, but he's managed to pick up a few details by eavesdropping by the water cooler or pretending to be engrossed in his own work while listening to the conversation just outside his office door. Whatever it is, it's incredibly dangerous and difficult to contain, and even harder to destroy. Not the big lizard, he's heard all about that thing. Whatever this anomaly is that his colleagues are being so secretive about, it's something different. The others actually seem scared of it. It's unsettling, seeing hardened senior researchers afraid of their subjects, but he shouldn't dwell on those thoughts, especially not now, not at night with no sounds around his office except the ticking of the clock on the wall and the steady drip of the coffee machine. He'll return it to the break room tomorrow. For now, there's no one else around who needs it. In spite of the coffee, exhaustion is knocking at the agent's door. He can feel sleep pressing down on him, drooping his eyelids and nodding his head. It's been a long week, and try as he might, he can't push the feeling away. He'll just rest his head on his desk for a few minutes. No one will ever even know. The agent wakes up to the sound of an alarm blaring, red lights flashing in the hall. How long was he asleep? A quick glance at the clock reveals that it is 2 a.m., 4 hours since he decided to rest his eyes for a few minutes. He takes a moment to get his bearings, remnants of sleep still fogging his mind. That alarm, can only mean one thing. There's a containment breach. And judging by the ear-splitting volume of it all, it must be nearby. His stomach drops as he considers the possibility of a worst-case scenario. What if it got out? The entity down the hall that no one will tell him about. What if he's about to learn the details in an up-close and personal setting? No, there's no need to frighten himself. Just follow the standard procedure for a containment breach. He stands up from his desk, gathers the file he was working on, and proceeds toward the closest emergency exit. Just pretend it's a drill, he tells himself. It'll all be fine. But as he walks down the hall toward the emergency exit, the blood-red flicker of the emergency lights casts strange shadows on the once familiar landscape. The whole place looks different at night, bathed in red. Like something out of a nightmare where you try to run from a monster, but your legs will only move in slow motion. With every step, he feels his heart race faster, his skin dotted with anxious sweat. Where are all the security guards? Where's anyone at all? The quiet is unsettling, with only his footsteps to break up the silence. Wait, silence? When did the alarm stop? He was so focused on getting himself out of there, he didn't notice when the sound cut out. The emergency light is still flashing red, but all the rest of the lights are out, he realizes. Something happened to the power. Or something cut the power, he thinks with a chill. Up ahead, in the dim red light, he sees a puddle of something dark and thick on the floor. Blood? But there's no body, no signs of a struggle. As he gets closer, he realizes that the viscous liquid covering the floor is not red, but black. And it's sizzling? Whatever it is, it appears to be eating away at the floor like an exceptionally strong acid. The walls on either side are looking worse for wear too. The paint is cracked and peeling, as if left unattended for years. But it didn't look like this earlier. It couldn't have. Whatever left this pool of black slime on the floor, it's breaking down the environment around it. Everything the goop touches begins to break down, to rot. If this puddle is here, then whatever created it can't be far. The agent holds his breath for a moment, not making a sound. He just stands still and listens. There, in the silence, one quiet sound breaks through. Drip, drip, drip. Like the liquid falling in the coffee pot back in his office, but different somehow, thicker. It's coming from somewhere very close by. He glances over his shoulder. Nothing behind him. Nothing up ahead as far as he can see. Then, the agent is hit with an impulse. He hopes to every higher power he can think of that he's wrong, but he has to make sure. He tilts his head and looks up at the ceiling. Something is looking back. There's a figure crouched on the ceiling, neck craned to look the agent directly in the eye. It looks like a man, or like something that once was a man. Now it's more like a skeleton draped in rotting flesh, dripping that same horrible black liquid. It grins at him with a wide mouth, eyes like cavernous holes. What skin he can see is gray and slick, hanging loose from the bone. As he meets its gaze, the thing begins to crawl down the wall, reaching toward him. The agent's mind goes blank with terror, pure animal instinct kicking in and urging his feet to run as fast as they can in the other direction. But the path back to his office is no longer clear. As he runs, the agent neglects to look at the ground in front of him. He doesn't see the puddle of black, viscous slime waiting to trip him. His foot hits the slime and slides out from under him. He hits the ground hard, coating his hands and knees with the goop. As soon as he touches it, it begins to burn his skin. He can feel it eating through the sole of his shoe, his sock, to the skin on the bottom of his foot. He cries out in pain and struggles to his feet. No matter how much it hurts, he has to keep moving. He can't let that thing get to him. He grabs at the wall, pulling himself up. Again, he misses something crucial in his surroundings. He does not notice the gray, rotted hand reaching up through the solid matter of the floor, grasping at his ankle. He has no idea it is even there, until something slashes through his Achilles tendon, sending him careening back toward the floor, clutching his injured ankle with a scream. As he sits there, helpless, he watches the arm continue to reach through the floor. It is followed by a shoulder, another arm, and then that face is grinning at him again. The creature pulls itself up through the floor and drags itself toward the agent. When it reaches for him this time, he can't run. He can't escape.
He feels its cold hands wrap around his legs, pulling him with a strength that should be impossible for such a decrepit-looking creature. It drags him down, down into the floor bit by bit, until everything goes dark. When the agent wakes again, he's lying on a cold, hard floor in an unfamiliar room. His head is aching, his eyes are blurry, and the skin of his hands feels like one big raw nerve. The sight turns his stomach, but he doesn't have time to focus on his injuries. First, he needs to figure out where he is and how he got here. The only thing he remembers is that disgusting creature, like a walking corpse, dragging him into a hole in the floor. No, not a hole. Into the floor itself. Somehow, the thing was able to pull him through solid matter. At first, he thought he might be underneath the Foundation site, in some sort of hidden basement. But as he takes in his surroundings, he realizes that he is nowhere near the site. This is somewhere new. The thought makes his blood run cold. Whatever reason the entity had for bringing him here, it can't be anything good. But there's one good thing about the agent's current situation. The entity isn't here right now. For the moment, he's alone. Alone in the lair of some unknown horror with no doubt malicious intent, but alone nonetheless. That means time to plan, time to perhaps even escape. The agent checks his pockets, looking for any type of weapon. Nothing in there except for his phone and a pen. The phone has no service at all, confirming his fears. He's nowhere near the site. He might not even be in the same world at all anymore. The phone is functionally useless, and the pen isn't good for much either, unless he wants to write down his dying will and testament. No, can't resign himself to that fate yet. He's a smart man, smart enough to land a career as a researcher at the SCP Foundation. He can figure something out. He has to. He pulls himself up onto his feet and takes in every detail of his surroundings that he can make out. It looks like he's in a large, dark, concrete room. At the far side of the room, he can see an open doorway leading into what appears to be a hallway. It's difficult to tell. The hall is pitch black. He doesn't particularly want to venture into the darkness beyond, but the longer he stays still, the more of a target he is. So, the only way out appears to be through. With shaking hands and his heart thumping away in his chest, the young agent steps into the blackness. He walks with his hands out in front of him, feeling his way through the hall. He might touch something dangerous, more of that slime perhaps. What's a little more damage if it helps him detect a threat early enough to possibly escape? The hall is like a maze, splitting off in multiple directions, stopping at sudden cul-de-sacs, veering off down sharp corners. It seems deliberately designed to disorient and dizzy. The more he tries to navigate it, the more the agent is beginning to feel like a lab rat. He wonders if the entity is watching him struggle, hanging from the ceiling with that same gruesome grin, waiting for him to exhaust himself so it can finish him off. He can't tell how long he walks. Hours? Days? He walks until his feet feel worn to the bone, until his head swims and his mouth feels like sandpaper. Maybe this is all he'll ever do again. Just walk and walk and walk in the darkness. The hallway dumps out into a new room, or maybe it's the same room he first woke up in. It looks the same, dull gray concrete as far as the eye can see. There, in the corner, is his discarded phone. It is the same room. He's gone in one giant circle. The agent sinks to his knees, laughing a humorless laugh as tears fill his eyes. It's all so horrible. It's all so absurd. And then, the dripping sound again. A drop falls on the crown of his head, burning his scalp. He looks up and is almost relieved to see the monster looking down at him. It opens its mouth as if to speak and spits a stream of the thick black mucus onto the agent's face. It burns like no pain he's ever felt before, and he reaches up to wipe the slime away from his skin, from his eyes, his mouth. As he does, he feels the skin coming away with it, sloughing off in handfuls that plop wetly on the ground. The agent can feel himself dissolving as the corrosive liquid runs down his back, over his shoulders. Wiping it away does nothing to stop it, as his face goes the way of his hands. He is melting away. He opens his eyes to see the monster standing in front of him, mouth open wide and gleeful. No sound comes out, but its shoulders heave as if the walking corpse were laughing. The mad, manic, desperate laughter pours out of the agent's mouth again, and he laughs until his throat melts and his vocal cords dissolve. Back at the SCP Foundation, the missing agent is declared killed in action. Nothing was left behind of him except a stack of paperwork and a pool of black, corrosive slime. Everyone knows what happened to him while he was alone on the night shift. He was a casualty of the containment breach, another victim of the elusive, the terrifying SCP-106. SCP-106 resembles the body of an elderly human man at an advanced stage of decomposition. Details of its appearance vary from encounter to encounter, but it is always rotting in some way. It is not especially agile or fast, but rather acts as an ambush predator, remaining still for days at a time before its prey comes close enough to grab. One of its favored methods is to scale a vertical surface and remain suspended upside down there. When prey comes close, SCP-106 will attack the major organs, muscle groups, or tendons in order to incapacitate them. Then it will pull them into its pocket dimension lair. Its preferred prey are humans between the ages of 10 and 25. The mere presence of SCP-106 causes matter, both organic and inorganic, to corrode. Whatever it touches will begin to break down within seconds of exposure in the form of rusting, rotting, cracking, and above all creating a black, mucus-like substance resembling the same one that coats SCP-106's body. I have a fairly strong stomach after researching the things I do for such a long time, but I will admit that photographs of SCP-106's effects render me a bit nauseated. The corrosive effect lingers and progresses for up to 6 hours after contact, regardless of the anomaly's presence or attempts to stop the corrosion. This corrosive ability allows SCP-106 to pass through solid matter, leaving a grotesque snail trail of black mucus in its wake. It is also capable of using its pocket dimension to vanish into solid matter, then reappear from another area connected to the initial point of entry. The pocket dimension itself consists of halls and rooms through which SCP-106 can stalk its victims to its heart's content. It enjoys the cruelty of the hunt so greatly that it has sometimes been observed to release its captives just so it can chase them down and capture them all over again. The containment procedures for SCP-106 have undergone multiple revisions since I first began reviewing the file. The more the Foundation has learned about the entity, the more information they have added to the official file. However, at every stage of the process, one instruction has persisted. No physical interaction with SCP-106 is allowed at any time. Any physical interaction requested must be approved by at least a 2/3 vote from O5 Command and may only be undertaken in AR-2 maximum security sites after a general evaluation of non-essential staff. All staff on site must remain at least 60 meters away from the containment cell at all times, barring a containment breach. If the entity moves beyond the planned containment area, then staff may do whatever is necessary to avoid being taken. SCP-106 must be contained in a sealed container made from lead-lined steel. The container is to be sealed within 40 layers of identical material, and each layer must be separated by no less than 36 centimeters of empty space. There's also a secondary containment area comprised of 16 spherical cells, each filled with various fluids and randomly assembled surfaces and supports. It is also outfitted with a light system capable of illuminating the area with at least 80,000 lumens of light at a moment's notice. All of these elements have been added over time as research and observation has indicated that SCP-106 can be confused by a complicated or random layout. It is also displayed an aversion to various liquids and to sudden direct light. If any corrosion is spotted on any of the containment cell surfaces, any surfaces within 200 meters of SCP-106, or most gruesomely of all, on the staff members themselves, it must be reported to site security as soon as possible. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-189, Hair Imitating Parasite.